All right, all right. Hey, Uncomfy Truths community. I am your host, Conservative Brother Daily, and I'm here with Conspiracy Brother. It's time. We are back for episode 21 of Uncomfy Truths. Going down today. Conspiracy Brother, how you doing?
Not too bad. How about yourself? Um, Glad to be able to as always, glad to be able to share in perspective with our listeners slash viewers. Hope to get into some topics that you all either enjoy or have heard about and give some more information or more context about. We are streaming live. I guess they call it simulcasting on
Mm-hmm.
Odyssey, Rumble. So if you would prefer to watch us on another platform that is not YouTube, that has a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more free speech, and like YouTube used to be before they got into the pocket of the Democratic Party, or vice versa, um, where you could just have any kind of videos you wanted. There was no censorship, no rules, no restrictions. So if you would like to support us on Rumble and Odyssey, you can do that. There's a link on the bottom. Let me see. I'll change that scroll on the banner for you know. Eventually, we'll
Mm-hmm.
have some things set up to receive donations to help upgrade our equipment and our process. Maybe even get an editor or two. Probably won't need two, but an editor or producer, and
Mm-hmm.
get things going from there. So I'll let conservative brother take it from here.
Yeah, appreciate you. Yeah, definitely. We just kind of keep things moving, keep things chugging, and just to focusing on the long game. So yeah, we got quite a few things to talk about. Obviously, we're streaming this on Sunday, so a little Happy St. Patrick's Day for the Irish drinkers out there. If you're still drinking and partying and whatnot. So yeah, we are on still on YouTube, which still has its issues, but Rumble and Odyssey, as Conspiracy Brother was saying as well. We broadcast bi-weekly, so at least twice a month, every 2 weeks. We've been mainly broadcasting on Fridays, but just with some scheduling conflicts, we may end up sticking to Saturdays and Sundays. So Sunday the 17th, obviously. So Fridays aren't all the way out, but at least for now, we're going to be shooting for Saturdays and Sundays, and we'll keep you folks posted. So we got a lot to talk about. A Fani Willis update in her case, as well as Trump, also TikTok ban, NCAA, and obviously the Boeing whistleblower death that we talked about. So yeah, conspiracy brother, let's just dive on in. I'm ready to share my screen, and we can kind of dive into this first article, and
Okay, sounds good.
yeah, just basically go from there. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, I've got you up now.
Okay, so the Fani Willis saga continues. This comes from the Guardian. Once again, take with a grain of salt. The Guardian kind of has its share of deep state tentacles in it. I think this is over the UK, I believe, but at the same time, just be mindful. Fani Willis accepts resignation of Deputy Nathan Wade in Trump Georgia case. Resignation comes after judge handed down ruling capping off series of hearings that investigated Wade and Willis's relationship. The Fulton County District Attorney, once again, this comes from the Guardian. The Fulton County District Attorney on Friday formally accepted the resignation. By the way, conspiracy brother, how's my audio? Just wanted to double check. It's
Yeah,
pretty
sounds
good.
great.
Oh,
Sounds great.
okay, cool. Fulton County
Is mine
District.
good?
Oh yeah, you good too. Yep. But
Okay.
just heads up, listeners, you may hear a plane going over me every now and then. I don't think it's going to be that loud, but just a little heads up. And maybe some kids running in the background. All right. So Fulton County DA on Friday formally accepted the resignation of her top deputy, with whom she had a romantic relationship, ensuring she would continue to prosecute the criminal case against Donald Trump over efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. The move by Fani Willis, came shortly after the judge overseeing the case ruled that the relationship had created enough of a distraction that either Willis or the deputy, Nathan Wade, needed to step down. The choice to step down was straightforward and expected, and Wade submitted his resignation to allow Willis to stay on as lead prosecutor against Trump and dozens of allies indicted on charges of violating Georgia's state racketeering statute. You led a team that secured a true bill of indictment against 19 individuals who are accused of violating Georgia law to undermine the 2020 election of the former president of the United States. Willis wrote in a letter obtained by The Guardian. Please accept my sincere gratitude on behalf of the citizens of Fulton County, Georgia, for your patriotism, courage, and dedication to justice. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. The
Repeat
rule.
that. Repeat that again. I just did hear a little bit of background noise.
Okay, that was a plane
But
heading by.
just
All right.
repeat it again. Yeah.
Willis wrote in a letter, so I think so far, I think it's Willis who may be actually resigning. Willis wrote in a letter obtained by The Guardian. Please accept my gratitude on behalf of the citizens of Fulton County, Georgia, for your patriotism, courage, and dedication to justice. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. The ruling by Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee stopped short of disqualifying Willis, which Trump and his co-defendants had sought over allegations that the relationship was a conflict of interest. The decision avoided catastrophe for Willis. An order removing her and her office from the case would have almost certainly delayed the prosecution significantly during reassignments to another prosecutor, who might have opted to toss the charges out altogether. Although the judge found the evidence insufficient to disqualify her from bringing the case, he was unsparing in his criticism of the way Willis so casually handled the relationship and the manner of her testimony on the witness stand during a series of hearings on the matter, which I had the unfortunate pleasure to watch. The Wade Willis relationship amounted to such a fatal appearance and prior and proprietary and priority that one pair needed to resign even if no actual conflict of interest existed, the judge wrote, making clear that the commingling of personal professional relationships was untenable. Shortly after Willis announced she had accepted Wade's resignation, okay, so officially Nathan Wade is resigning. Trump went on Truth Social and said the development was big stuff. The Fani Willis lover, Mr. Nathan Wade Esquire, had just resigned in disgrace, Trump wrote, among many other things. The Trump co-defendant Michael Roman in January moved to disqualify Willis because of her relationship with Wade, which is at a time was not publicly known. Willis and Wade admitted to having a relationship, but said it did not begin until Wade had been hired to work on the Trump case in 2022. The case being led by Willis' office contains only some of the dozens of criminal charges against Trump for the subversion of his failed 2020 election run, retention of classified documents, hush money payments. In civil litigation, Trump has been found liable of sexual abuse of writer E. Jean Carroll and had been adjuncted as having committed business fraud. Excuse me. Trump nonetheless has secured the Republican nomination to challenge Democratic incumbent Joe Biden for second presidency in November. All right, this is a little ad at the end, little election plug. All right, so conspiracy brother, I'll let you go first. What do you got on this? A lot of spicy developments with this. I definitely have my thoughts on it. I think they should have dropped the hammer a little more, but you go ahead and set it off.
Well, I think I had really been paying attention a lot because I already thought there was quite a bit of corruption dealing with the whole process in Georgia and some of the other swing states, where you had overnight, hundreds of thousands of ballots showing up. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you have district attorneys like this. You've had the attorney general like Letitia James in New York, who essentially blatantly ran on the idea, the notion, the motivation that they were going to get Trump. And I mean, no matter what you think, if you're supposed to be operating in a legal system that is guilty until proven innocent, you can't expect there not to be a level of um, corruption involved when there isn't um, incontrovertible evidence that some crime was committed. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
If obviously, if we'd known him to be some type of mass fraudster, murderer, like how that mob guys in the back in the day, oh, this person is responsible for XYZ, then okay,
mm,
then I can see it. You can at least understand that we know what this person is doing, but we just can't get them. I'll be the one to do the work. But in a situation like this, it shows that there's an interest. Now, as it pertains to just her relationship, I just feel I don't understand how this isn't fraud. I can't remember if
mm-hmm.
we covered on this show, but I believe we did, that she paid Nathan Wade like $650,000 over the course of the investigation up to this point, and the other two law offices that she paid received like either between 60 and 90,000. The other two,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was a completely outsized amount, and some of that money she even used with him to go on trips.
There
So
was
it's just
even
weird.
On top of that, there was even the whistleblower within Willis's office. It was the lady. She was like either some clerk or secretary. Like there were, I don't know if you saw her testimony, but she was literally like, "Yeah, I was going through the books and I was seeing this was, this was going toward iPads and all this and all, So they got people within her own office who was spilling the beans on this and calling it out early. And of
Yeah,
course, I think she got fired or resigned or whatnot. But yeah, yeah, keep going. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there in case people forgot. I forgot the lady's name, but she was on
yeah.
record. Yeah.
I didn't remember
Mhm,
either,
mhm,
because like I said, I just assumed that with the amount of corruption that is going to be involved, whatever the findings of this case, um, well, I will say not whatever the findings, but if this case does rule against Trump, I know he's going to appeal it. So, you know, I didn't invest a lot of energy into it. I already thought it was, like I said, a certain level of corruption involved.
mhm,
So, it's to me, it was a foregone conclusion that it wouldn't be a fair trial, and I
mhm,
didn't need to really engage with that so much. But yeah, I mean, the trips, the items of purchase, the fact that this relationship occurred and you hired this individual to work for you, I mean, it already brings up a lot of what do you call that? Conflicts of interest. And
mhm.
so, it just again, if you have a situation where the objective of the people involved is not to find evidence where it is and to present it as it is and to argue, with what you have, but it is to get a result, then you're already in the wrong direction. So
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I kind of just had to kind of call this out as it is. A lot of people might get a little mad, but I feel like with this, what we're seeing here is, and there's actually this kind of, he's more of a conservative pundit named Carl Jackson. He kind of talked about this. Like, there's a weird sort of like black blue privilege, like black female Democrat privilege going on, where our own people, we don't want to call out our own people for the dirt and the corruption that they are doing. We kind of let this whole kind of black girl magic, which I get it, black women empowerment, that sort of thing. I'm all about certain women's rights. Obviously, the modern day feminism has gone a little too far, but we're letting a lot of that stuff blind us to the fact that what Fani Willis, Nathan Wade has done, and many others, we're just kind of letting that blind us. It's kind of like the racial idolatry, where there's nothing wrong with black pride. Black pride is not anti-white, no matter what anybody says. You can have pride in your own people, and love for your own people. However, at the same time, having love for your people means giving a tough love to your own people as well. It's saying what's unpopular, the uncomfortable truths. So even with like a Ketanji Brown Jackson, like I don't have no beef with her outside of obviously she's a liberal puppet, like many being on the Democrat side. I don't think she's in there to benefit the advancement of black people no more than Clarence Thomas was. And same with like Claudine Gay over at Harvard. Found out she was guilty of over 50 plagiarism counts. I don't care about her positions on Palestine. I'm pro Palestine. I'm pro ending the Gaza ceasefire. Obviously, they dumped her for that. But the issue I have is that while we still kind of overlook the fact of her plagiarism of the things that she is guilty of, and just relying on, well, she black and they coming after her, go blah blah blah. And I feel like we need to just black people quit. We need to just be honest about knowing, like, having nuance and context. And like, okay, I didn't agree with her on that. I think what they did here was wrong, and I'm not going to just blindly defend her just because of the skin color, because that whole skin folk ain't kinfolk. All right, because guess what? If Claudine Gay was a black conservative professor who got caught 50 counts of plagiarism, stealing from a black liberal professor, she'd be enemy number one of the left. Okay, so we need to quit. We need to be honest about certain shit and be like, yeah, we could still support our people, but have the tough love to call them out when it needs to be called out. All right, like I said, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I don't have much beef with her as far as like but basically, I think her only thing when she was getting sort of that like public interrogation when every SCOTUS is about to get appointed, she was like, "Oh, I can't define what a woman is. I'm not a biologist." So that was some pandering to the left that I didn't really like. But other than that, I just feel like we just have to be honest about where our people are doing wrong and not just blindly just defend them for the dirt they're doing just because they're black. So I just want to kind of land my plane there unless you had anything else to add. Because I think
Well,
we
yeah,
gotta we gotta
I
cut
think
that out, you know.
well, yeah, I think in a lot of cases, and it can be difficult, I think, for people to see it this way. But when you have a system where your idea of justice is the ability to enact or participate in the same level of corruption, treachery, evil, or whatever, how you want to look at it, bad, wrong, as everybody else, it degrades the quality of the whole system. You know, like that was one of the things with Hillary Clinton, right? For example, when she was running for president.
Yeah.
When you look at her desire to run for president, it was purely rooted in the fact that she wanted to be president, right? She did not even pretend, entertain the idea, the concept that her running for president was because she had such a great and unyielding love for the country and a concern for the direction it was headed in or the potential direction it could be headed in. And she wanted to do this great civil service for American people and the world by extension. It was
Hmm.
purely because she wanted to be president. I mean, what did they
It's
say
it's
when she was
my
running?
turn. It's my
Right.
turn.
It's her turn. She's the most qualified ever. And like, what does that mean? Most qualified. How do you become qualified for a job you never had before? One of the greatest things about a job, really, as far as qualification is concerned, really, is experience. Oh, she was a senator. She was a secretary of state, whatever, whatever. Sure. First lady, sure. But none of that prepares you in truth for the job,
Mm-hmm.
right? You may have a grasp or a better grasp of the apparatus of government. But look at Joe Biden. He's been president for, he's been in government for almost 60 years. And can you notice a measurable difference from Trump to Biden in a positive way?
Hmm.
Can you notice a significant drop off between Trump and Obama in a significant way?
Oh yeah.
Right? There is not some magic formula, but that is how she would portray it. And so in these situations, when you have, members of government or high office or members of important positions in hierarchies of schools, elite schools, for example, right? You look at Roxanne. What's her name? Not Roxanne Gay. Roxanne Gay is that writer. Claudine. I think
Claudine Gay, yeah.
Roxanne Gay is Haitian too.
I don't know who Roxanne Gay is. Who's that?
Roxanne Gay is she's like writes for New York Times or something. She's a real like lesbian feminist, kind of extremist, I would say. Claudine Gay, like, what was her qualification, right? And how did her qualification differ from the qualifications of everybody else who applied for this gig?
I'm black and gay. How
And
dare you question me? That's my qualification.
I think Claudine Gay has a husband.
Oh yeah, yeah. I keep forgetting. Yeah.
Roxanne Gay is the one that is a lesbian.
Okay,
but
I'm confusing the gays.
Right. But you know, her qualification, I'm sure she was vetted to whatever degree, but you know, was there a greater interest in having a so-called black woman, or you know, the perception of diversity at Harvard? Was that more important than getting the most qualified individual for the job? And I'm not saying that any of the past presidents have been qualified. What I'm saying is, when you want so much to do whatever you can to push people along in the process, let's say she was qualified. Do you normally do background checks? Do you normally do these types of checks on you know, their educational materials? And on top of all this, we still need to factor into it. We'll talk about this with TikTok and some other things. That because of her stance with the anti-Zionist protest on Harvard's campus, you know, she may have been targeted by some Zionist members of, you know, the country, the government, the world, who wanted to find something on her. I mean, maybe this is let's say this is a frequent scenario where people, because they said Bill Ackman, who was a Zionist, Jewish Zionist billionaire,
right?
His wife also was found to have plagiarized materials. So I mean, there's multiple facets of ways to look at the situation. But again, I'm not trying to justify it because somebody else, you know, breaks a rule or breaks academic, what do they call it? Academic code of conduct, doesn't give you the justification to do it, especially when your husband isn't a billionaire who funds the university you teach at to the tune of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly, that's fair. I think they should have came after Mrs. Ackman, but of course, you the first lady of like Harvard's #1 donor, it ain't gonna happen. So yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Like most definitely, I'm with you there. You know.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, that's what I'll say. And as far as the situation with Fani Willis, again, I think, you know, like you said, with the, and it applies to both cases, but like you said, or even with Ketanji Brown Jackson, when you submit to the idea that you got to support black people, no matter who they are, obviously, except for black Republicans, because you never hear this being said about Clarence Thomas. You never hear this being said about Larry Elder. You never hear this being said about Jesse Lee Peterson. You never hear this being said about a variety of black conservatives. But when you can see that you got to support black people because they're black, irrespective of what they actually do and how they feel and what they say, you end up in these situations, right, where you have a Supreme Court justice say that because she, a woman, is not a biologist, she doesn't know what a woman is. And we expect her to be able to know what. How do you know what anything? How do you know what a cat is if you're not a cat?
I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know if that's a cat. Conspiracy brother. I don't know if that's a cat or a dog. I'm not a veterinarian. How can you ask me that?
How do you know what a murderer is? How do you know what a violation of, you see what I'm saying, of some type of right or crime or whatever? How do you know that if you aren't a person who is directly involved? And so a lot of this too, it comes back to speaking about just this idea, you know, this what do they call it? Subjective morality and this idea.
Selective and subjective. I say like to say selective too.
Catherine Liu talks about it in the Virtue Hoarders book, and I I don't have it in here right now, but if there's something, the transgressive morality or something. And this, at least how I understood it to be, this idea in practice where things only mean things to the people who they mean things to.
Mm.
And so if they don't mean things to you, then they don't apply, kind of like. And, it's a weird world where you try to compartmentalize truth
Yep.
and law and application of it based on who is involved and who is affected,
And whose skin color it is, because we, like I said, that
Right.
racial idolatry. So this is my last kind of point. I'm gonna land my plane here on a great point that Andy Frisella, he's the founder of First Forum. He has a podcast called Real AF. Definitely check that out. I've shared it on our group chat before. At its foundation, and there's the danger of the identity politics, and what obviously white liberals and of course the Republicans have been doing for years is using different black puppets. Goes back to what Malcolm X was talking about, using different puppets or their propped up leaders or black people to say, hey, these are your leaders. This is the person we're going to put here to fight for you, when they really are beholden and they report to their white liberal puppet masters. So what Andy Priscilla talked about was the fact that early politics was about, obviously back before the Industrial Revolution, the rise of the factories and all that stuff. Most people were common town folk. We were, black people, early 1950, pre 1950s, we were entrepreneurs. We had our own small businesses. We had our own towns. We frequented our own businesses. And I bring that up to say that even back then obviously while, it was still majority white in the political atmosphere, like 1800s and before, a lot of these politicians were small town farmers. They were small town folks. They pretty much worked on the land. They had their own trades, vocations, and it was a public service. You didn't go into politics as a career. It was a public service where it's like, damn, I'm a farmer. Oh man, I'm a banker. Oh, I'm a shoe salesman. And you know what? I'm going to go in here and do my service for 3 to 4 years. Even going back once again, George Washington. I know there's a whole history behind that, but you got to give it to the guy. After he helped defeat uh, helped defeat the British, they were like, we literally, George Washington, want to make you king. We want to make you a king and turn America into a monarch. He was like, no, I'm done. I did what I had to do. It's a constitutional republic. I'm done. And at least for years, I think up until maybe the early 1900s, it was like that, where we didn't have this sort of deep state. I'm going to go to college, major in political science, join all the political clubs, and go into it as a career. That's the biggest issue, is where people go into politics dead broke, hippies making $20,000, and then they come out multimillionaires with a book deal, a memoir, a Netflix production company. So that's the biggest thing. If I could say anything when it comes to anyone out there in our community that's looking at a politician or looking at anybody they want to potentially vote for, you got to look at, okay, what have they already built? What have they already built? Second, what are they giving up? All right. And if they're like, I'm giving this up because I care to fix this issue, and it's not, oh, what can I get? What can I run on to get a book, to build clout, to start a podcast? That we have to go back to that public servant foundation, where you're not in it to get all the lobbying dollars. You're not in it to get a position. You're not in it, to become the AOC's, Nina Nina Turner's, the squad members of the world, or the Hillary Clintons, or obviously all the other rhinos and the establishment Republicans. So I feel like at its foundation, going back to Fani Willis and all these politicians as a whole, you got to look at them and say, where did they come from? Where are their morals? What did they already build before politics? And what are they giving up by going into it? Not what are they going to gain, and what machine are they going to build for themselves? We got to keep that in mind when you look at any politician, whether you believe in voting or not, or even like speaking or talking to these people. What are they giving up, and what are they going to gain versus what are they giving up by going into it? So I'm gonna just lay my plane there with Fani. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll leave it there. I won't comment anything else, but You know, uh, I agree with much of what you said. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now we gotta talk Trump. We got a couple things coming up. Trump um, backing the Israel war in Gaza. We also got another article coming right up. A video you mentioned about Trump still supporting the vaccine. So those of you guys that when we're really hard on the Democrats, you guys think we're just these Trumpers. Guess what? We got plenty of smoke for Trump. We just call out a lot of the BS that the deep state is coming after Trump for. But guess what? We'll still poke at plenty of issues and gripes we have with Trump fairly, because that's the uncomfy truth. It's context, mother. It's context, guys. So, conspiracy brother, this is your article. Feel free to go ahead and give some context, or you can go right into reading it, and then we can break this one down.
okay, so there's been a lot of action on the what is it, the uncommitted movement, which is people who will not vote for Joe Biden because of his stance on Israel and Gaza, or the Palestine and the genocide happening to the Palestinian people. And so Trump recently came out saying that something to the effect of Israel should finish the job or something like that. And so I thought it was interesting that even after we've seen an outcry from the Republican base saying that we don't need to spend any more money on foreign wars or sending money abroad. And I think even as it pertains to Israel, which, to the establishment on both sides is like um, the darling child of all these different politicians. He still would be beholden to Israel in some capacity now. It doesn't say that he would be willing to fund Israel by any great margin, but I think that's very likely to be the case, and it's less likely that he's going to refuse funding. So let's see. From this is from France 24. Trump backs Israel's war in Gaza. Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump expressed his support for Israel's war in Gaza Tuesday. So this article comes from, it says, what does that say? Oh, 6. So it's French. So they do day, month, year. So it's the 6th of March, 2024. So I'm sitting here like, this isn't June.
Not
In
quite.
his most explicit comments yet on the fighting, as international pressure grows on the United States to rein in its ally. Quote, yes, end quote, Trump responded when asked during an interview on Fox News if he was, quote, in Israel's camp, end quote. The interviewer then asked if the former president was, quote, on board, end quote, with the way Israel was executing its offensive in Gaza. Quote, you've got to finish the problem, end quote. So it was finish the problem, not finish the job. Trump responded. President Joe Biden, whom Trump is set to challenge for the White House in November, has come under increasing fire both internationally and from his own Democratic base over his backing for Israel as the death toll in Gaza soars and the specter of famine looms. The fighting began with an attack by Palestinian militant group Hamas on southern Israel on October 7th, resulting in about 1,160 deaths, most of them civilians, according to an AFP tally based on official Israeli figures. Israel's retaliatory offensive on the Gaza Strip has killed 30,000 people. Now, I was watching something, and they were saying that Ralph Nader, I believe, estimates that you could be looking at about even 200 to 250,000 deaths at this point, because that 30,000 number hasn't really changed in months.
Yeah, I'm saying that number sounds really low. Coming
Yeah, for the
from
amount of people they're
source.
killing daily, it
Yeah,
it's been like 30,000 for a couple months, and this happened in October. So
right. Yeah, it's
you would
more than
expect
that.
with the amount of death, it's significantly more. Yeah.
Way more than that.
Mostly women and children, according to the health ministry in the Hamas ruled territory. U.S. protest movements have urged voters to punish Biden at the polls over his support for Israel. More than 100,000 people in Michigan voted, quote, uncommitted, end quote, rather than cast their ballot for him in the U.S. swing state's Democratic primary last week. As conditions deteriorate, Israel is facing an increasingly sharp rebuke from its top ally, the United States. Vice President Kamala Harris expressed, quote, deep concern about the humanitarian conditions in Gaza, end quote, during talks in Washington on Monday with Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz. So that should be it.
Oh,
Um,
short
but
read.
yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
So, again, what you see is when it comes to, and again, it didn't show that Trump was supportive of sending money or weapons, but I can only imagine that he is, and that he understood that may be, a red flag for his base, among other issues, namely the vaccine. He's still very proud of his work on the vaccine.
Oh, we're
But
gonna get into that. Yeah.
But what my theory was watching some months ago, maybe more than 6 months ago, Redacted with Clayton and Natalie Morris, and they interviewed Whitney Webb, and she was talking about two books that she recently written. Forget the names of them, but they go into detail about how even historically, a lot of members of government were pedophiles, and the way the mafia was able to operate in the United States without facing strong opposition from the federal government or the FBI was because they would set up members of government, namely J. Edgar Hoover, who was rumored to be, I only say rumored because I haven't personally looked into it, but rumored to cross-dress and like men or engage in a homosexual relationship. And so they had this dirt on him. And so in order to make sure that it never got released, he basically gave the mob free reign to do what they did in this country. And so there's this long history, even the CIA blackmailing American politicians and members of government in order to get them to do what they want, or the CIA using the mob, because the mob already operates outside of the rule of law to do those things that I'm talking about. And so it makes you wonder, what dirt does Israel have on these politicians, that they are all in lockstep supporting it, that they are not even considering telling Israel to dial it back in any meaningful way. They're not considering halting weapons shipments or funding. I mean, the U.S., when Obama was president, I believe in 2010, they were giving Israel $30 billion over 10 years. So $3 billion a year. Which I was watching a debate or something. They were saying that this essentially is just proof that Israel's economy and its whole country is completely propped up by the United States and Western allies' financial support. If Israel had to rely on its own production or I guess production is the best word I'll use for now, to sustain its country, to sustain its citizenry, to sustain its government, it couldn't do it. And so, just like I've thought this before about former colonies in the United States or the West, not the United States, but the West, South America, North America, who, you have significant poverty and understand the need for self-determination. But, It makes you wonder why some of these countries decided to be, and I mean, a lot of it I understand why, just having looked into it and researched it, but just for the sake of the conversation, it makes you wonder why they ever wanted to be independent from their colonial power. These same situations, you wonder why a country like Israel needs to exist to the point where it becomes essentially a drain on other countries to support it because it does not have the means to support itself. So
Mm.
I'll leave it there for now.
Oh, bet, bro. You were spitting bars faster than many people could keep up, and we talked about this so many times. Israel has this lockstep on the U.S. for a reason, and like I mentioned, I said this before: Trump and Biden, whoever's going to be in the White House, they have to bend the knee to the Israel regime, as well as the intelligence community and the military industrial complex. So there's been plenty of ties. People can look them up. We're not going to do all your homework for you. Where Mossad, which is a government blackmail psyop, there's been links to that in Epstein Island. Those have been kind of working in conjunction. It's tied also to Israel. Okay, so Trump is going to have to bend the knee to Israel or toe the line, because like you said, this thing runs deep. The deep state runs deep. The ties to the pedophile rings. It's all connected. And I say that to say I hate to do the whole pick the lesser of two evils. I don't believe in the lesser of two evils, to be honest with you. But it's a matter of us deciding if you believe in voting. If you don't vote, you just haven't voted, you abstain from it. I totally get it. All right. It's a matter of like, I'm not gonna like never vote Democrat again, but at the same time, it's a matter of saying, okay, what party or what, even though I know the dirt, I know the how the sausage is made, what party in certain aspects or certain issues leans more toward my common interests. As we can see right now, Biden's restoring the country, record inflation, open border, all this type of crap. Trump, you're still going to get back in Israel. You're still going to get military industrial complex. He did slow down and not start any wars. But I feel like even if Trump is reelected, he's going to have to continue the Israel agenda, even though he didn't single-handedly start the conflict over this Israel versus Palestine. He's going to have to still co-sign on it. I believe that Trump, at least, hold the plane. I can't hear anything. I believe Trump and the Republicans, in some aspects, can do some things that will slow things down. They'll close up the border in some aspects, even though there's some rhinos that are all for the open border. He will be able to do some things that have common interest to black people, as far as like slowing down the border, putting the LGBTQ woke trans stuff, slowing that down, but it's not going to benefit people long term. And the Republicans, damn sure, or Trump aren't going to give us reparations. So I don't like to call it a lesser of two evils. I like to call it, what party is swaying towards some common interest that I could vibe with, but I know good and well, long term, they're not for us or by us. But what have you done for me lately, or what can you do for me right now in this lane? So that's what I'm saying. Because you got Biden and Trump, they're both for Israel. And, like I said, with everything going on in Palestine right now, you can't just look at Palestine as far as October 7th and after. You got to look at what happened before. Same with 9/11 and what happened before that led to that. So if people look under the subfloor, if they look underneath and see how the sausage is made, and see how it comes back to this government deep state with Mossad, Epstein was just an offshoot of Mossad, and it all ties back to Israel. And like you mentioned, conspiracy brother, this deep rooted deep state that rules people through blackmail, through compromising, through trying to first pay you off. And if they don't take the money, guess what? They're going to take you up the mountain. Take you up the mountain means they're going to find shit to assassinate your character or compromise you. So it's both ways. So I'd say Biden and Trump is still going to back Israel either way. But you just got to look at, okay, on a micro issue, on these single issue areas, or these other three issues, what could have a short term benefit for my people? But this Israel thing, it's the mafia, so they're here to stay. So sorry, I couldn't be more optimistic.
Well, I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of times when you try to artificially find optimism instead of just being able to accept the realism and fight to change it, I think that's a problem. So I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy the truth. I appreciate it, and it gives me the opportunity to continue to work towards updating myself so that the truth can get out.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I remember my wife was telling me about Jeffrey Epstein years ago, and she was talking to me. She said, "Yeah, this guy, he was like arrested for being a pedophile, and
Hmm.
he got like work release, and she had a book of like notorious criminals or whatever, and he was in it. Like they had, serial killers and stuff, and then he was in it, I believe. If he wasn't in this book, she was reading about him years ago and talked to me about him, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, who is this guy? And so I looked him up, and it was just crazy because you couldn't find anything that would let you understand where he got his money from. You didn't
Hmm.
know where he got his money from.
Yeah.
He didn't graduate from college that I could find, but he taught math at elite high schools in New York. And it was just really weird. It was a really weird background on this guy altogether. And, he didn't kill himself. But I don't even know if he's dead. I don't even know if I really believe that he's dead. But,
Mm.
you know, I haven't seen any pictures of autopsies or anything. And even if you did, I wouldn't prove it. But,
Hmm.
yeah, it's, I mean, the thing that I'm always hung up on is he had a plane called the Lolita Express. And the book Lolita was about a teacher who
Yep.
kidnapped a 12-year-old that he was in love with to have sex with her.
Yep.
So,
Yep. The
I
book.
mean, why would you name a plane that and people get on it and nobody says, "Hey man, why did you name your plane this?" So
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah, the
stop it
rabbit
there.
hole runs deeper. No, great points. Great points. Now from one rabbit hole to the next, we have here a conspiracy brother. You want to share this video from the great Jimmy Dore. Obviously, Jimmy Dore uh, really crushing it in his lane, um, and calling out things as it is, pissing off conservatives and progressives alike. This is another update or I guess video with Dr. Robert Malone. I believe he is the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. Early whistleblower to everything going on with the vax. So conspiracy brother, why don't you take this?
Wait. Just it's breaking up just a bit. Okay, yeah, you paused it. So yeah, but I think you said you wanted me to take over.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. I'll break this
Well, it's
down.
just yeah. So Dr. Malone he's the inventor of the RNA vaccine technology that was used to make uh, the mRNA vaccines. He's been a critic of application of the vaccine and Dr. Fauci and the rollout. And he says that you know it won't work. He said that it wouldn't work because of the type of virus that COVID-19 was. And so he's been on Jimmy's show a couple times. He's really gotten a lot of pushback from the mainstream and national media and international media. And it's interesting. that we always want to trust the science, but here you have the guy who essentially invented the science that we're using, or at least invented the the prototype for the science that we're using, and you want to just completely disregard him as some kind of quack or conspiracy theorist. But in this video, him and Jimmy discuss the fact that Donald Trump, what the title is still can't admit the truth about the vaccine. He still wants credit for it. He still believes that it was overall a good thing. And while I can accept and recognize that Trump did not support mandating use of the vaccine at this stage in the vaccine's implementation and rollout, we can see some of the health issues that have arisen. And so he should be able to be a little bit more honest with the American people and admit that, it isn't as good as he thought it was or would be, and, ask for forgiveness. But,
Yeah. So should I play the first few minutes? Or
sure.
all right.
I can't hear it. You might have to reshare.
Oh, you can hear that?
No, it might be. I can hear you clicking, but I can't actually hear the video.
Oh, I think
Try it
it's
again.
because I have my headphones in. Hold on. Let me know if you can hear it now.
Say anything again.
Yep.
So I've been.
You can hear it?
So Jimmy, you're forcing me out,
Yep.
Okay.
out of the shadows on this one. Because I'm busy talking to various, let's say, conservative influencers that have aligned to the gentleman about what the heck do we do with his recent posting on Truth Social, in which he came out and endorsed the jab so heavily, talked about how it's now curing cancer.
Yeah.
What a job he did. And he ridiculed Biden for and basically taunted him, saying that Biden wouldn't have had a jab. He didn't say they were a vaccine product if Trump had so with this
You got to rewind it just a little bit.
dropped
That background noise.
have had a jab. He didn't say they were a vaccine product if Trump hadn't done everything that he had done. So with this one post that dropped, I think the day after the infamous State of the Union address, Mr. Trump created just a shitstorm among the people that have been basically holding their nose and saying, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump instead of RFK because Trump, even though we don't like the fact that he is responsible for the jab, he is a better manager. He is knowledgeable. He's a potential wartime president. He's going to be able to fight the deep state more effectively. All this relative to RFK. And so there's a whole cohort of conservatives that are now in a real bind because of this tweet from Mr. Trump. And you just put the pin in it when you said, well, what's going on here? And, why this and why this issue? There's three observations, and I'm not at Donald Trump's head either, thank God. So I don't know what he's thinking. But it did sound like he was reacting to some of the things that he heard in the State of the Union address that pissed him off.
Okay.
It also came right after Super Tuesday. And so a case can be made that he felt that he was now on safe ground because he passed through the Super Tuesday funnel. Not that that was ever going to be that much of a filter for him. And so he could let his hair down a little bit, so to speak. Thanks for the laugh. Um, that was gratuitous, but I'll take it. I'm not a comedian, so okay, good meet you. It did come right after Super Tuesday, and it just reeked of a big pharma donor. So I don't know what the motivation was here. I don't know what the backstory is. I just know that as somebody who has been cautiously walking a tightrope in this space, believing that Mr. Trump is the best option currently to address the huge problems we have with the deep state right now. And the World Health Organization, the WEF. Remember, he bravely took stances then that he was ridiculed for that now, in retrospect, look prescient. They look like they were brilliant.
Yeah.
And very much foreshadowed where we're at right now. So there's a lot, as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot to like about Mr. Trump. I haven't endorsed anybody, but I've been carefully walking a line in case I get called to duty at some future conservative administration. I don't want to piss anybody off. But then he came out with this posting, and it not only was a problem for me because I've been speaking favorably, despite my strong position regarding the ethics and the lack of scientific merit, in my opinion, for continuing with this product. But I'm still perplexed about why and about what can be done to help Mr. Trump to see through the propaganda and to see, for instance, the vaccine injured and recognize that they're there, to see the damage that has been caused by this and this set of policies. And to what is most bizarre is that he functionally, with this statement that these mRNA products are now curing cancer, he functionally endorsed both the industry and Peter Marks at the FDA, who's been behind the shenanigans, because Peter Marks.
Okay. So let's just pause here for a minute.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. So let's just pause here just to kind of discuss what we heard. I'll let you go first, just so you can get your thoughts out.
Yeah, definitely. This is very telling, and this is why, like, once again, we're not pro Biden here. We're not pro Trump. There's a lot of smoke we have, and once again, like the same eerie allegiance and kind of just oblivious allegiance to Trump that we see with Israel, we see with this vaccine. And I think there's like this quote from I forgot if it's like a poet or philosopher, Upton Sinclair, like a man's salary is dependent on his misunderstanding. I'm butchering it, but basically like a man not understanding something is dependent on his salary of misunderstanding it. Something like that. I kind of butchered it, but it's like a quote by Upton Sinclair. All right. Now, when I bash on Israel, once again, I condemn the Hamas attacks themselves. I condemn any loss of life from any civilians, innocent Israeli civilians. When I talk about Israel, and I hope everybody else, we're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, the IDF, the corrupt Israel government. I stand with the innocent Israeli citizens or civilians. I don't stand with Israel itself. All right. So I say that into saying I don't condemn every vaccine person.
And
Another plane.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we were pausing here,
Yeah.
just to remind everyone that there may be inadvertent noise in the background, and we'll pause. Conservative brothers.
I'm near an airport today.
Yeah, it's a different environment today, so we're doing what we can to bring you the information we have as we can present it to you. So it is what it is.
Exactly. Thank you, conspiracy brother. And yeah, let's keep that banner going as well. Definitely support uncomfy truths. But yeah, so I kind of bring that up to say I'm not condemning every single person that works for a pharmaceutical company. They should die, or they like the random janitor sweeping the floor at the Pfizer headquarters. You have blood on your hand. I'm not doing that. Same thing. I'm not condemning every Israeli civilian. It's the top down. It's the leaders of that organization. So once again, Republicans weren't always anti-vax. I mean, you had literally Ronald Reagan signed the 1986 Childhood Injury Act, which sounds good, but guess what? That gave immediate immunity to all vaccine makers going on 30 plus years. So you see the same stranglehold with both presidents, I mean, Trump and Biden, with the vaccine that you see with Israel. And like I mentioned, anyone who's going to become president, they got to bow down to the Israel regime, the military industrial complex, big pharma, and the intelligence community. So this is no different. I think Trump at some point in 2020, he was touting this is our vaccine, Operation Warp Speed. And I think a part of his ego. I think it is part ego. It is part he has a vested interest. And guess what? He has people around him. He still keeps bad people around him. All right. Despite his soaring in the polls, he's still bad at really choosing cabinet members. So I think it's a combination of he doesn't get the full aspect of everything going on with the vaccine, but he also has a tie. He has a blood oath to pay. Same thing as supporting Israel. So I can go deeper on that, but that's my initial thoughts. So conspiracy brother, I'll give it to you.
Well, yeah, and see, I always take a more cynical view about this stuff, and I'll say that Trump is um, incentivized either internally or externally not to understand why he continues to pick swamp monsters to fill his cabinet
Yeah.
when his objective was to drain the swamp. Right? You don't get guys like John Bolton, when you're talking about draining the swamp. A man who's responsible for a lot of our international conflicts, or Elliot Abrams, right?
Mhm.
When you lose people like General Douglas McGregor, who are not Colonel Douglas McGregor, right? He never made it to general, and when you hear him speak, his commentary on the U.S. political system and the military kind of indicates why he doesn't have why he hasn't moved up. When you look at was it the general of the Joint Chief of Staff, or the head of the Joint Chief of Staff, Mark Milley, or whatever he is, I forget what his title is, Mark Milley, who went to I think he went to boarding school with Rachel Levine, the transgender doctor. They
Yeah.
were football teammates and schoolmates. And you can get why individuals like that behave the way that they do, and they get elevated in the government.
Mhm.
Again, I'm an anti-war, but for me, being anti-war doesn't mean that I'm anti common sense. And what I mean by that is, even if I would say, the U.S. shouldn't spend as much money on the military, and the U.S. shouldn't spend so much energy on wars and things like that. Me saying that as a citizen who is anti-war, and the U.S. government doing it, a government who has never in the history of its existence, maybe except the first 5 to 10 years of its existence as a nation, has ever been interested in not engaging in war. And maybe, I'll speak for at least the last 100 years that the United States government has been thoroughly invested in war. So for them to do things that appear to weaken the military, to do things that appear to undermine the strength and stability of the military, is a red flag. Whether or not I think it is an inadvertent benefit to my views as an anti-war individual, right? You still see that doesn't make sense. And I will agree with you that a lot of it is pride and it is ego, and so Trump wants to still promote this vaccine because it looks good to say that you have been able to do something that has never been possible before. But I also think that there is just, my more cynical side. I start to look at a lot of this stuff as political theater, and I start to look at a lot of this stuff as a false choice, and it allows you to be more invested in the process if you believe that Trump is a legitimate threat to establishment power, or if you believe that you know him being elected is legitimately a threat to our democracy and the global world order. It allows you to buy into this process in some way or another, which allows you to further entrench yourself within the matrix. So I'll let that. I'll go and let you get into what you were talking about, because I know you were saying about the blood oaths and things like that. So that kind of perked my ears up, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely get a chance. And those listening, our Uncomfy Truths squad, army, feel free to follow Mike Adams over at Natural News. He founded his own little network called Brighteon. So he was kind of like a lesser known Alex Jones type, spits a lot of truth, isn't as like kind of over the top sort of like showy as Alex Jones, but he been getting censored on social media for just as long. So he's been long banned off of like Twitter and Facebook. But go to like Brighteon.com and subscribe to his podcast. He founded Brighteon, but he has a podcast within that network called Health Ranger Report. He does excellent deep dives. Obviously he kind of leans conservative on a lot of things, but he's definitely pro-Palestine. He calls out the genocide, tying that to Israel, Mossad, the New World Order, the globalists, all of that stuff. So it just goes to show you that you can't just live. We can't keep living in this world. I think I saw some online called coincidence theorists. So conspiracy theorists is where we're kind of showing the connections. We're having an open mind. We have enough of us common sense to put our ego and pride aside. Like, well, I work a job and I got a house. I do this and I got a family. I know everything I need to know about the world. I got it all figured out. I'm the man. Like, no, you're not the fucking man. There's a lot that you don't know beyond government, business, politics, beyond your own little world. So if you have enough common sense and humility, you start to have enough pride to connect the dots. Hold for playing. Okay, I'm back. All right. So there's conspiracy theorists where you swallow your pride and you realize, oh, this is gonna be uncomfortable, but let me connect the dots. And then on the other side, you got coincidence theorists. A coincidence theorist, everything is a coincidence. Oh, how can you? No, they just want to lock us down as for our best intentions, or no, it was safe and effective, or no, they just want to help kids transition and discover who they are. So you got conspiracy theorists on one side who are realists, like these are the dots. This is how the real world works. This is what they're doing to you, and not telling you. Then you got coincidence theorists. So I kind of say that to say there's a lot more research you can do as far as like once again the ties between big farm, Israel, military industrial complex. Plenty of sources I could recommend, but I would say start with Mike Adams over at Brighteon.com. His podcast called the Health Ranger Report. So I'm gonna just kind of lay my plane there with that. Unless you had anything else to add, conspiracy brother.
Um, well, what I will say, as
Hmm.
far as the whole, coincidence theorist,
Hmm.
is something that I've said, frequently, but there is no coincidence. There are no coincidences. And the sooner we as a group accept that, the better we can be to try to change the things that occur.
Hmm.
There are no coincidences, right? And
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that there is some all powerful entity in control of everything.
Hmm.
But um, I use that more specifically in the political sense, that, for example, the TikTok ban or the so-called suicide of we were just talking about Jeffrey Epstein, or the so-called suicide of John Barnett.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things don't happen in the real world when things aren't being manipulated. There are no coincidences. So you going to take this article? You want me to read it?
Let me see. Well, I read the. I could read this one because I think you read the last one. It's up to you. You want to read it? Yeah, I could read it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I can read it. You can read it.
Okay.
You can kind of set the tone. Just
Yeah.
I don't use TikTok.
Mm.
I remember when TikTok was Musically. There's a YouTuber named Fresh Prince, and he used to do videos, like compilation videos mocking people on Musically and TikTok when they would do the voiceovers, and it was like cringe stuff, voiceovers and like weird stuff like that. And this was years ago. This was probably almost 10 years ago, if not 10 years ago. And I would watch the videos and I would say, man, this is so weird that these people are doing this stuff, essentially publicly, because you're posting it online. How do they convince people to do this stuff? And then a little later, I found out that the company who owned Musically, ByteDance, was Chinese. And I said, oh, so they must be. Now, this is before learning about all of the intrusive permissions that you have to allow for TikTok to have on your phone to use it. This was before all of this, was years ago. And I found out that, that ByteDance was a Chinese company who was behind Musically / TikTok. And I was like, man, so the Chinese government is using social media to influence American people to do dumb stuff. And I kind of said it tongue in cheekly, but I also kind of meant it. And I feel like when you look at those NPC, whatever you call them, where the people are talking about, thank you for the rose, eating the hot dogs, thank you for the glizzy and stuff. Like, I feel like that is a big red flag for the program or the product, the social media app. But also, when you look at how much personal information they need to be able to look at your emails, your text messages, listen to your phone calls, look at your location. It's like tons of stuff that you have to give them permission to do to use TikTok. But not necessarily, and this is kind of the caveat, not necessarily any more than Facebook. I mean, I remember my first couple smartphones had Facebook native built into it. Even my Samsung, I think up to Galaxy 6, Facebook was an app that you could not delete. All you could do was disable it, right? So you couldn't. And, I've heard it said, I've never looked into it, that there are so many people on Facebook that even if you don't have one, there's a page for you because of how many people post their interactions and you're involved. There's essentially a page for you, or there's a page for everybody, even if you don't have a Facebook. And I have a Facebook and I haven't used it in years. And I have it disabled and I just have it. I keep it for the pictures that I have on there. But, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Vine, all these different social media sites, MySpace, have utilized, and I think MySpace probably was, because it was so new in this process, it probably was the most pure of all of them, but they used various methods of social control or information data, what I call it, information and data mining, to get their product. Like me and you have talked about on this show frequently, the expression is, when the service is free, you are the product. And so, all social media sites are free. You are the product. So, but I'll let you get to reading it if you want.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of just sort of give my initial thought because obviously everybody's at least up and aware on sort of pretty much the TikTok ban craze over the past few days. So, a lot of people we need to remember like this TikTok ban goes back as early as 2020, when Trump was talking about getting it banned and kind of the benefits and the obviously the downsides. Obviously, TikTok is owned by a Chinese owned company, ByteDance. And the fact that we can get into the culture war stuff as far as like the far left, like, oh, they're teaching all these pronouns for kids to be trans. There is that, but at the same time, we have to remember the long game. We have to remember the Trojan horses. We have to remember the government website registration website called LifeLog, which was I think launched in '02 or '03. It was kind of like a government sort of experimental psyop, if you will, their foray into social networking. And guess what? They ended up connecting with Mark Zuckerberg, and LifeLog shuts down February 2004. And guess what pops up the very next day? Facebook. All right. So, like you said before, like when you're not paying for the product, you are the product. It's so totally true. And we've all gotten connected on Facebook or GroupMe or whatever it is. We've all ended up opting into stuff where guess what? They took our data. So, this is nothing new. Um, I believe once again, censorship both on both sides is a no go for me. While there are things on TikTok that I cringe at, and I know there's really destroying a lot of people's and kids' brains. At the same time, I think if the parents need to step up and play a role in monitoring their kids. And there's a lot of things, safeguards you could put on TikTok. For one thing, don't give your kid a phone or don't have them be on TikTok. So there are things that the parent we need to step up, and these parents need to do what they need to do to protect their kids, because doing something like this, once again, this is once again going to set another dangerous precedent. The same dangerous precedent coming after former presidents and not giving them immunity for whatever insurrection charges they're making up. We're seeing the same Trojan horse now. So I want to kind of lay this foundation. I thought this article from Forbes would be kind of like a different perspective. Most people are kind of aware of everything going on with TikTok. They either love it, TikTok, they hate it. But at the same time, I think most people would understand censorship, not really in this case, like just government control takeover of this sort, where either the government can now has precedent over it, or they have to sell it to I think a US based company has no precedent here. So I'm gonna hold for the plane, and then I'm gonna read the article. Okay, all right. TikTok ban. Here's what Wall Street's saying, and the U.S. firms at risk of contagion. Contagion. This comes from Derek Saul, Forbes staff writer. These publicly traded companies have the most at stake should legislation pass to ban TikTok in the U.S. Unless the social media company's Chinese parent offloads the social media platform to an American owner, according to analysts. Key facts. Perhaps the most significant impact of a TikTok ban or a forced sale from TikTok owner ByteDance is the potential for the Chinese government to retaliate against American firms' business activities in China. Rosenblatt analyst Barton Crockett says he has a measure of a concern for Apple should China retaliate, while the potential for Congress to investigate other Chinese based apps like Temu and Shine could hurt Meta, considering 10% of Meta's advertising revenue last quarter were from Chinese discount retailers. And risks exist for Amazon, as about half of the e commerce third party partners are from China. Uh, Wedbush analysts led by Dan Ives identified Apple and Tesla as companies carefully monitoring any backlash from Beijing. Apple and Tesla are among the majority American firms most reliant on China, with Greater China uh, accounting for 19% and 22% of Apple's, Tesla's respective global revenues during their fiscal years. Perhaps the most directly impacted by a TikTok ban, is TikTok's American data storage provider, Oracle, which likely enjoys a roughly $1 billion revenue stream from its TikTok business based on Alibaba's revenue losses and Oracle sales growth. When TikTok's data operations migrated to Oracle, Bernstein analyst Mark Mordler postulated in a Thursday note. However, Mordler noted Oracle's fair valuation would not be impacted as its data center business high growth more than makes up for the possible TikTok loss. On a positive front, Crockett identified Instagram Reels parent company Meta, YouTube Shorts parent Alphabet, and Spotify as potential winners of the roughly 10% of American revenue, advertising revenue currently captured by TikTok. Eyes floated the potential for Apple, Oracle, or Microsoft to be in the mix as investors should. Be in the mix as investors should. TikTok's American operations do in fact change hands. TikTok brought in a 16 billion in U.S. sales last year. Financial Times reported Friday. That's about 3 times the U.S. revenue brought in by Spotify last year. 5 times the North American revenue generated by Snap last year, and 6 times the U.S. sales raked in by X in 2021. The entity formerly known as Twitter, most recent full year, article keeps jumping on me. Recent full year as a public company. God damn. I forgot. I lost my spotting. Okay. Digital revenue advertising behemoths, Apple. Oh my God. Alphabet and Meta brought in 146 billion and 61 billion in their respective U.S. and U.S. Canada regions last year. But yeah, I'll any initial thoughts? We can kind of get into more of the numbers. I think following the money on how different American magnets are going to be affected by TikTok's ban is very interesting. But Conspiracy Brother, you have any initial thoughts? This is just more kind of numbers.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. All right. How TikTok compares to U.S. content competitors is showing that currently TikTok's making 16 billion in revenue. Okay, only Meta's topping that, and also Alphabet. Big number, 268 billion. That's the most recent reported internal valuation of privately held ByteDance. That is nearly exactly equivalent to the market capitalization of Netflix, the world's most valuable entertainment first company, but far smaller than the over $1 trillion valuations of Alphabet and Meta. The key background. The House of Representatives passed a bill Wednesday that would require ByteDance to divest or force the removal of the highly popular TikTok from American devices. TikTok, the highly popular short-form video app best known as the highly personalized content algorithms, faced similar challenges in 2020 under then-President Donald Trump, who now opposes a ban. Criticism of TikTok largely centers on the threat of the Chinese government access to the data for roughly half the U.S. population through TikTok. Though TikTok maintains it operates wholly dependent of the Chinese Communist Party, I'm still a little skeptical about that. Both Apple and Tesla reportedly year-over-year declines in their normally high-growth China businesses during their most recent quarters, contributing to the company's recent underperformance on the stock market. So once again, I get it. Like the conservative far right, they like to fearmonger China, but because once again, we do got to watch for the Chinese Communist Party. They do have a reputation notorious for their cutthroat business dealings, taking gold mines, taking companies, business sources, IP, and they have no problem taking our data. So I'm kind of with people on that. I don't call that a conspiracy, but at the same time, I don't fearmonger it to the point of like acting like the American big tech companies over here are any better. So yeah, Conspiracy Brother, go ahead and if you have anything you'd like to kind of add on this TikTok ban foolery, take it away.
Well, yeah, like what you just said. I mean, that was probably one of the bigger things that I was going to say is just, when you look at the way, for example, during COVID, how, award-winning patent having doctors and scientists were forced to or forced into silence because they contradicted the mainstream accepted narrative surrounding the virus, surrounding the vaccine. The way that you saw how through the Twitter files, how the U.S. government was censoring or informing Twitter to censor different people's opinions if they contradicted the accepted government narrative or if they antagonized the Biden administration. You can really not see a distinction between the Chinese government and let me try to adjust my mic. The Chinese government and the U.S. government as it pertains to the social media sites. And so if the contention is that the only governments that should have the ability to censor and interfere with and spy on American citizens is American government, I find that to be a insufficient counter narrative or argument. And they're not arguing for a lack of censorship and infringement of our rights. So at best, what we're looking at is only being spied on by the government of the country you actually live in and not a country that you don't live in and may never even go to.
We're trading one slave master for another.
Right. And one is more consequential. One is more consequential because one slave master, you live on his plantation, and the other one is 3 or 4 states away, just to give perspective.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I don't know if this article is going to talk about it, but some audio released from the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, which is an Israeli, I don't know how you would describe it, an Israeli attack arm used to attack those who they determine are anti-Semites. And the head of the ADL was heard on a hot mic saying that, TikTok is affecting Israel's ability to retain and gain allies, right? Because so much information is being shared about the plight of the Palestinians that Israel looks bad. And so because they look so bad, I muted you. So because they look so bad, well, okay, you muted yourself. So because they look so bad as a result of the TikTok, they want to ban it so that they hope that the information being shared on TikTok, because I think for Gen Z people either 30 or 25 and under, something like that, is where they get their news. Majority of people get their news from TikTok. And we saw when we talked about a little bit about the Osama bin Laden letter that was shared on TikTok, just the way the information spread. So you have a lot of people who use alternative sources. So the United States government sees it as advantageous to get rid of TikTok, not only at the behest of Israel, but for its own self-interest, which, this should disturb us all. And if you want to look, Glenn Greenwald has his show System Update, where he goes into great detail about the dangers of allowing this to happen. And one member of Congress, Thomas Massey of Kentucky, gave a great speech explaining why this was not something we should be happy about or supporting. Censorship of a social media platform. And a couple other conservative members of Congress have spoken out against it, even saying that, that we have no guarantees that these types of things wouldn't be done to United States social media companies. And so, it's it opens a can of worms, definitely, that I don't know if we're prepared to really deal with at this point.
Yeah, and I'm gonna lay my plane here, but this is the classic Trojan horse to what 9/11 was to the Patriot Act for foreign war policy. this TikTok ban is to big tech. So I think once again, like I mentioned, I got my beefs with TikTok as far as kind of the Chinese business security risk. You have the crazy far left culture war stuff, indoctrinating the kids. But guess what? You got all types of ignorant YouTube, Facebook content that's been rotting kids' brains out for years from all the different platforms. Pick your poison. So once again, the parents got to step up. Don't give your kid a phone. Limit the apps. Y'all got to do what they got to do. My most important thing is for the kids. You know, so that's sort of my issue. If you're a grown adult, you falling for all this BS? Hey, I'm sorry, you a grown man. Too bad. But yeah, we definitely got to protect these kids, but not to the extent where we're inviting government overreach. We're inviting the fox into the hen house with this. You know, you can make parameters around TikTok. You could disagree with a lot of the weirdos on there trying to groom or get at your kids. You could put your own safeguards in place. Hell, I remember back growing up having cable TV and digital cable, and your parents locking channels and putting codes into the remote so you couldn't watch this channel. You couldn't watch the Skinemax or the HBO Showtime. The young bucks us back in the day was trying to sneak up, stay up late. So there's always been this. So parents, step it up. So yeah, I'm gonna just lay my plane there, unless you got anything else to add. Conspiracy.
Well,
brother.
yeah. So exactly what you were saying about um um you were just talking about the need for parents to take a greater role in monitoring how your children are engaged in these different things. I can remember people doing the cinnamon challenge, right? You can
How about
remember
the
all
Tide
types.
Pod? The Tide
Yeah,
Pods,
all
bro? Bruh.
you had people taking alcohol, and instead of drinking it the normal way, they were pouring it inside their buttholes. That was like a trend that was going on. You had kids who were
Of course.
drinking hand sanitizer years ago because it was a way to get alcohol when you were underage. Had all types of stuff. I mean, one of the more mundane was the planking, where people would just lay like a board everywhere. Um, but you have had these issues with social media, and never have we seen or heard a government intervention, right?
Mhm.
Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg basically admitted that it is impossible for the social media companies to legally monitor the transmission and distribution of child pornography on its sites.
That's free speech. You violate my free speech.
Well, he didn't even say it in that regard. He just said it was so difficult because it's so pervasive
Yep.
that it's just impossible to keep control of it. And nobody's talking about trying to shut down Facebook.
Not a one. Crickets.
But here we are. They would have you believe that the worst thing in the world is TikTok for some reason, because the Chinese government is on it. And as I said, who is responsible for outsourcing all the jobs and all the infrastructure to China, all our production capacity to China? It's I'll stop there, but this is clearly an issue that is probably going to go against the American people because of lobbyists and because of the desire to violate our constitutional rights. So,
yep. Amen. All right. So moving forward, y'all, thank you for tuning in for Uncomfy Truths. Keep watching. We're probably about midway through the show, maybe 2/3. but we keep the topics spicy and we keep them coming full throttle. So next we have here Kamala Harris fails to explain why she didn't prosecute Stephen Mooch's bank. So this is very interesting. I know there's been a lot of talk about Steve and Mnuchin, who was in the Trump administration, talking about getting together with investors and possibly buying TikTok to avoid a ban. So, Conspiracy Brother, I know you wanted to share this article, so feel free to give us some context, or we could just dive into if you want to read this for us.
Yeah, so it was another article that I had posted about Steve Mnuchin potentially putting together an investment group to purchase TikTok. And the reason why that would even be acceptable is because he's an American. So in theory, he will be able to give the U.S. government the ability to censor TikTok and to limit the free speech of users of TikTok and curate the information being released, like you see on YouTube, like you see on Facebook, like you saw on Twitter before, and even still to some degree before Elon Musk purchased it. And so one of the things that I was trying to say in the group is just Steve Mnuchin should have been prosecuted by Kamala Harris in like 2016 or 14. Might have been 14 or 13. She should have prosecuted One West Bank. And, at the very least, he might not be in a position to do these deals and to have been the Treasury Secretary and all this other weird stuff. So that's kind of the basis for this article. Just showing that, the corruption that exists within our government is very pervasive. And when we try to, as we talked about earlier, when you try to say, oh, well, Kamala Harris is black, so we have to support her, what you end up doing is you devalue the quality of the argument, you devalue the office that she holds, and you devalue any real critiques you could make about the impacts of the decisions that she made while she was in her previous role and currently. So kind of that's it.
Big facts. Did you want to read the article or just highlight? It's up to you. No, we can move on to the next.
Yeah, we can just highlight some of the parts of it just to give an overview because well, I'll read from the top just to give we don't have to read the whole thing. It's not really long, but we'll see. Former California Attorney General Kamala Harris. Now, this article is from when? It was from 2015.
There's no date on here.
Okay, so it's from the Center for Popular Democracy.
It was published by The Intercept originally.
Yes.
Intercept. So
okay. So former California Attorney General Kamala Harris on Wednesday vaguely acknowledged The Intercept's report about her declining to prosecute Steve Mnuchin's One West Bank for foreclosure violations in 2013, but offered no explanation. Quote, "It's a decision my office made," end quote. She said in response to questions from the Hill shortly after being sworn in as California's newest U.S. Senator. And so to say, it's a decision your office made, you make it as though your office is a separate entity from you, right? You are the office. When you become the Attorney General, all your actions are the embodiment of the office. The office is not a thing that exists outside of the office holder, right? The office is not a living, breathing organism. It's not a democracy or a democratic body where you have different members within it who can determine what the Attorney General should do, at least not theoretically, right? It shouldn't be. But maybe she's letting us know, as you said earlier, how the sausage is made. Quote, "We went and we followed the facts and the evidence, and it's a decision my office made," end quote, Harris said. Quote, "We pursued it just like any other case. We go and we take a case wherever the facts lead us," end quote. So that's Kamala Harris' famous word salad. Mnuchin is Donald Trump's nominee to run the Treasury Department and served as CEO of One West Bank from 2009 to 2015. In an internal memo published on Tuesday by The Intercept, prosecutors at the California Attorney General's office said they had found over 1,000 violations of foreclosure laws by his bank during his time and predicted that further investigation would uncover many thousands more. But the investigation into what the memo called, quote, widespread misconduct, end quote, was closed after Harris's office declined to file a civil enforcement action against the bank. Harris's statement on Tuesday doesn't explain how involved she was with the decision not to not prosecute or why the decision was made. She also would not say whether the revelations would disqualify Mnuchin for the position of Treasury Secretary. Quote, the hearings will reveal if it is disqualifying or not, but certainly he has a history that should be critically examined, as do all of the nominees, end quote. Harris told The Hill. She added that she would review the background and history of all Trump cabinet nominees. Senate Democrats have vowed to put up a fight over Mnuchin, even creating a website inviting homeowners to list their complaints against One West. And yet, not one senator has commented publicly on the leaked memo, which received media coverage in Politico, Bloomberg, The New York Post, CBS News, Vanity Fair, CNN, CNBC, and other outlets. The Intercept has reached out to half a dozen Senate Democrats' offices, including those of Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and leading Mnuchin critics Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, receiving no response. Senator Tammy Baldwin D. of Wisconsin retweeted the story, as did the Twitter accounts of the Democratic National Committee. But another DNC tweet just hours later hinted at the bind Democrats are in when it comes to using the information against Mnuchin. That tweet praised Harris's swearing in. Her decision not to prosecute may make her new colleagues wary of pursuing it. And you see what I'm saying? So when you just make a decision, it could be race, it could be political ideology, it could be membership of clubs or social groups that make it completely devalues your ability to do what you are supposed to do. Because they're Democrats and she should be implicated in the fact that he was not charged, they have to say, well, we can't comment on it because, and ultimately Steve Mnuchin became the Treasury Secretary. And, I forget all the terrible things he did because there are so many things that you have to remember. But, I think we can leave it here. But one of the other things that's important to remember, Steve Mnuchin or One West Bank or some organization affiliated with Steve Mnuchin gave Kamala Harris $1,200 for her reelection campaign. And I was told when I found that news out that, that was an insignificant amount of money. And so, they expected me to believe they were Kamala Harris supporters. I expected them to believe that trivial amount of money could sway her decisions to not prosecute. Now, the first thing I'll say is I don't have $1,200 to spend at one time for a political opponent. So for that to be a trivial amount, they say that over 60% of Americans can't even afford $1,000 emergency. So to invest $1,200 in a political candidate who could theoretically lose, which would mean a zero return on investment, is a big deal. Secondly, if the money didn't matter, she never gave it back, one, and two, again, when we talk about the whole no coincidences thing, coincidentally, after having given this money, he did not get charged. And we also have no way to know if any other groups or organizations or people affiliated with Steve Mnuchin gave her money as well, which would amount to more than a single $1,200. So, I mean, the corruption knows no bounds, and the people in charge would like you to believe that everything is on the up and up, and the only issue that we should all be worried about is China.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what else can we say about from just coming from Kamala Harris? Should we be surprised? Should we really be shocked at any of this? I can just kind of go and do sort of the greatest hits of Kamala Harris as far as like her basically, screwing her way to the top, like banging the mayor of San Francisco, to Montel Williams, or the Montel Williams or Jordan, the TV host, Montel Williams.
Montel Williams.
Montel Williams, there's that. That's her prosecuting hundreds of black men. I know there's maybe like an accurate number, but keeping them long past their prison sentences. We gotta bring this up. I know, like, conspiracy brother, other people listen, like, yeah, I get it, conspiracy conservative brother. I know. Well, a lot of people don't know this, so you gotta keep reminding. You gotta be professionally annoying and reminding people of Kamala. This is what you do with the danger of identity politics. This chick who's from the Jamaican Caribbean's not even black, but claims that pandering card whenever she can. But yeah, she kept hundreds of men past their prison sentences to get kickbacks for more free prison labor. That's the guys that are a fan of the 13th and like, oh my God, what they did to the 13th documentary. That's your girl. Come get your girl, Kamala. So I could go off on more Kamala's foolishness, but if you just see how the sausage is made, her history, if you do some real research beyond the mainstream media rah, you'll know that, this shouldn't surprise you about Kamala. So this is what happens when you, like I said, y'all don't like me when I say this, but when you put the racial idolatry above the correction and behavior. So this is what happens. You get Kamala as your vice president. So, all right, moving forward, we're going to go over to Vigilant News. So this is a story that I definitely thought was very interesting. Keeping with, hold on, hold for playing. Unless conspiracy brother, you can say something while I'm on mute.
So this is 16 female athletes sue the NCAA for allowing men to compete in women's sports. Among the grievances being forced to share a locker room with a naked man.
Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to read this article. We're going to deep dive a little bit. So like I mentioned before, and this has kind of been a sort of a riff of mine throughout the episode, is the fact it seems like black folks, we have, not all of us, I don't like to deal in absolutes, but we have this weird thing when it comes to certain political issues or just things going on or trends. We act like because it didn't hit us directly, like it's something that happens to white people and not us. We ain't got to worry about that. That's not going to worry about it. That's not going to hit us. Oh, why are you worried about all that? So these are the same people that back before COVID came over here, was over in China. You had Waka Flocka on some news podcast, some podcast saying, oh, that ain't gonna affect black people. We got a good immune system. These are the same people where you see the kind of woke trans agenda, transing the kids and all that stuff. You have them black folks saying, well, that's them over there. That's the white, they ain't gonna worry about us. They ain't gonna suffer that foolishness. And then we find out there was a person offering a strip pole tease, a strip pole lesson class for kids for like a bunch of black girls that ended up coming out like a few months ago, like earlier last year. And now we have once again this issue of these biological men who say I identify as a woman, so I want to compete in these sports. And I posed the question, how soon do we got to get hit over the head with it directly until we wake up to like, yes, it's going to affect you too. Like, why is it like, well, that's them over there. That's white folks over there. Like, well, like whatever ends up hitting them is going to hit us twice as hard. Didn't COVID tell you guys that when we have like we have the highest amount of diabetes or chronically ill illnesses. So it's kind of the same effect where black people, we have this selective memory and we don't realize like when shit's over here coming, it's going to eventually come to us. We got the Black Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, that coming up, that whole migrant situation where once again, we were ringing the bell on this when Joe Biden took office and opened up the border like early 2021 on how this is going to disproportionately affect black people. and now it's here, and everybody's acting shocked. So I'm saying, how long until it's a matter of time to where your favorite black female athlete is going to get hit with hope for plenty? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna break this down. So I just wanted to kind of simmer on that because I know y'all a little salt. I'm not saying, I'm just saying we got to have that uncomfortable conversation that I feel like black folks try and act sort of very, I'm not trying to talk down. I'm just trying to say, like, we got to wake up. This is a blind spot that's been affecting us in a lot of different areas as far as like migrant issue, the women's rights in sports issue. So we got to realize that it's going to come knocking when it comes to the migrant issue, COVID, and now the women's sports. So this comes from Vigilant News. 16 female athletes sue NCAA for allowing men to compete in women's sports. Among the grievances, being forced to share a locker room with a naked man. All right, so this article originally appeared on Zero Hedge and was republished with permission. Guest host by Tyler Durden. In the latest attack on transgender madness in women's sports, former University Kentucky Wildcats swimmer Riley Gaines and 15 other female athletes have filed suit against the NCAA, alleging violations of federal Title IX law arising from its insertion of man to woman transgender athletes into women's competitions. The NCAA's most basic job is to protect the fairness and safety of competition, but instead, NCAA continues to openly discriminate against women, Gaines told the Free Press. Much of the complaint centers on what women experienced at the 2022 National Swimming Championships. And infamously, man to woman transgender Penn Quaker Leah Thomas was not only allowed to compete against women, but was also given use of the women's locker room, as described in this excerpt from the 156 page complaint. The first time most of the plaintiffs became aware of Thomas's access to the women's locker rooms and restrooms was when Thomas walked in on them while they were fully naked or in state of substantial undress. 2, when they unwittingly walked in on Thomas and observed Thomas undressed with male genitalia exposed, or 3, when Thomas undressed in front of them. NC State Wolfpack swimmer Kylie Allens chose to change in a dimly lit storage and utility closet, behind a set of bleachers, rather than risk being caught naked by Thomas or having to see him stand around naked, displaying his manhood. I was literally racing U.S. and Olympic gold medalists, and I was changing in a storage closet at this elite level meet. I just felt that my privacy and safety was being violated in the locker room, Allens told the Free Press. Women's racing suit are so tight they were required 15 to 20 minutes to put on, notes the complaint. While you're doing this, you're exposed, said Caitlin Wheeler, another Kentucky swimmer, to the Free Press. You can't stand there and hold a towel around you while putting the suit on at the same time. Thomas, who wasn't a noteworthy candidate when competing against fellow men, won the women's national competition in 500-meter freestyle by a huge margin, beating 3 female Olympic medalists in spectacle. And another Riley tweet. Among the plaintiffs is Tyler Matthau of the University of Florida Gators, who didn't make it to the final of the 500 free because Thomas took the slot. The inclusion of Thomas also cost Matthew first team All-American honors. Gaines noted that the NCAA swimming championship environment was even more Orwellian due to Title IX fanfare that accompanied it. The NCAA's passed around shirts that said 50 years of Title IX and 50 years of creating opportunities for women, but these were the same people who were actively taking our opportunities away and telling us we weren't worthy to be called champions, but instead this man who merely says he is a woman is. Hammering home the irrationality of the NCAA's approach. Plaintiffs says the NCAA allows men to compete on women's teams with a testosterone level that is 5 times higher than the highest recorded testosterone for elite female athletes. It asserts that regardless of having taken hormone suppressing drugs, postpubescent men have a biological edge which no woman can achieve without doping. All right. Um, Lawsuit was organized by the Independence Council on Women's Sports, a group that exists to promote and protect women's sports. The plaintiffs, who also include track, tennis, volleyball athletes, are demanding that the NCAA make rule changes to bar biological males from women's competitions, revoke awards previously given to men who beat women, and also pay damages for pain, suffering, and mental and emotional stress, suffering, anxiety, expense costs, and other damages due to defendants' wrongful conduct. So, conspiracy brother, what are your? I'd like to kind of get your initial thoughts. A lot to unpack here, but I'm not surprised, and I think once again, um, what's happening to one group. If you remain silent, don't be shocked when it comes knocking on your door, as I've been saying. So, conspiracy brother, feel free to.
Yeah, so there's another
Yeah.
article I want us to read that deals with some other aspect of this. It's a Fox News article, but it talks about a revelation in the NCAA. So could you pull it up right quick? And then I kind of they just kind of go together.
Did you just
so
send
much.
it to me? Or?
I posted it earlier in the group, but I could send it to you here now just so you can pull it up if you want.
Yeah, go. Did you send it to me in the group? Me, like my personal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, but I'll get it and pull it up.
Yeah, shoot it over to me real quick.
Because I know I sent a lot. I know there's some we'll get to. It's already been 2 hours, but you know, it's always just you never know how the show's gonna go. So
yeah, we still got some time. So I could pull it up. Oh, okay. All right, perfect. Yeah. If you send it to me on the private chat on StreamYard, it's much easier. Okay, yeah. So like I said, like I mentioned, black folks be acting like, oh, that little, China virus over in China, they ain't gonna affect us. Wrong. Oh, migrant crisis, whatever. That's those Texas problem. That's not gonna affect us. So that's Chicago. And here we are. I just feel like once again, there's going to be a lot of outrage where eventually there's going to be a Simone Biles or Sha'Carri Richardson type who's gonna get a rude awakening when one of these, trans women take the spot. I'm just saying.
I kind of joked that if there was a sport that made money that I played, if there became a women's sport that I played that made money, I'm a woman. I'm going to make my money. You don't even have to change anything.
Yeah.
But here's the article. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the other one. So what the NCAA's blockbuster admission says about the future of women's sports. NCAA's Charlie Baker made a bombshell admission buried in a recent letter to the U.S. Senate. Published March 14th. Opinion piece by Doreen Denny. So here we go. No, brace yourselves for this foolishness. Oh, give me 1 second. I'll send you a better. I
could put in the Comfy Truths email or.
No, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
I mean, you ain't got to do that. They're not smart enough. Doesn't matter.
Okay, don't worry. Yeah, you could put in the article in the chat. But yeah, while Conspiracy Brothers doing that, yeah, once again, like we're just opening this question up to say, like, because we here while we are on Comfy Truths, we are kind of a first. We are about the truth, as uncomfortable it might be. It breaks the narrative, or maybe it may not make our people always look. Yeah, I don't see it yet. Did you?
Oh yeah, but I couldn't. Your sound went out for a minute, and I didn't
put
know
in the StreamYard private chat.
Yeah, I got it in.
Oh no, I'm still here. Okay, I got it. Okay, I'm about to do it now. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we're just posing the question like this. We can also talk about how an issue it is for all women, but at the same time, like how happens when you put identity politics end up, jumping over, leapfrogging over other people here. So yeah, it's taking a little while to load up. But I believe that. So do you want to describe what the link is?
Yeah, it's the same Fox News article. I can try to pull it
Mm-hmm.
up on my phone. Let's see. On my let me see. I can
Oh, so you got a little workaround around the paywall.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've shared it with
I
the
don't know why
group
it's not.
before, but I think maybe you forgot about it. So can you
It's
see
not
mine?
loading.
I put it up
I
I pulled mine up.
yeah, pull
You
yours
can
up.
see it?
Yeah, I see your screen now. Yeah.
Okay. So it says so we already read that. So getting down here, it says 2 years after. Oh, look. So it says former NCAA official William Bach III talks to Outkick's Gains for Girls podcast about his decision to resign from the organization. So that's just another video of Riley Gaines. But it says 2 years after University of Pennsylvania trans athlete Leah Thomas won a national title in women's swimming, the National Collegiate Athletic Association continues to brazenly throw female athletes to the curb to make way for trans identifying males to take their place on the podium, not to mention their scholarships and their opportunities. Champion swimmers like Riley Gaines, who had to step aside for Thomas to appear on the winner's podium, or Kylie Allens, who had to dress in a storage closet to protect her privacy and dignity from a biological male in the locker room, have never received a hearing by NCAA executives about what they went through or what other female athletes faced going forward. At a time when the NCAA faces backlash for suppressing women's achievements, NCAA President Charlie Baker made a blockbuster admission buried on page 18 of a recent letter to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Quote, now this is the big thing. This is the big thing here. The
Mm-hmm.
NCAA has never studied the harm of its policy allowing males identifying as women to participate and compete on women's teams, end quote, not ever. Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, posed the question among a series of in follow-ups to Baker's appearance at a hearing entitled "Name, Image, Likeness, and the Future of College Sports." Senator Mike Lee has the NCAA assessed the physical, emotional, psychological harm of its transgender inclusion policy on female athletes? If so, what are the findings? If not, why not? President Baker, the NCAA has not conducted any research related to the current transgender policy. That's a bombshell. The NCAA's, quote, transgender student athlete participation policy, end quote, which sent Leah Thomas into the women's locker room and continues to promote males for national titles in women's sports, has never been researched for its now evident harm to female athletes. In many federal courts of law, this fact alone would be grounds for a nationwide injunction. And it's a serious admission in black and white, especially as the NCAA faces the heat of misogynistic history as Caitlin Clark continues her impressive record-breaking run in women's basketball. The University of Iowa standout just shattered the NCAA Division I career scoring record. But achievements of previous record holders, most notably Lynette Wood of the University of Kansas, 1978 through 81, were never recorded because the NCAA erased female athletes in the annals of college women's sports. As Sally Jenkins, writing for the Washington Post, observes, quote, to sum up, the NCAA doesn't regard women's basketball records as records because before 1982, the NCAA didn't want women in their organization, end quote. Today, the NCAA doesn't care if competitors in women's sports are even women. It's fully willing to allow trans-identifying men to break records in women's sports, along with risking their safety, stealing their trophies, suppressing their athletic achievements, and even taking their scholarships. Baker's astonishing admission should be grounds for the NCAA to cease and desist from its trans participation policy immediately. How can the NCAA continue to double down on a policy dictating inclusion of trans-identifying males in women's college sports if that 14-year policy has never been evaluated for its harm to female student athletes and obligations under Title IX. How can the NCAA's chief medical officer proudly prioritizing mental health and its Committee on Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sports, CSMAS, responsible for NCAA transgender policy, defend this trans inclusion framework without ever researching its harm? They can't. We know from experience the policy has directly and disproportionately impacted women athletes physically, emotionally, and psychologically. To make matters worse, while Baker was testifying in Congress last fall, the CSMAS was appointing a new, quote, independent, end quote, director, Dr. Jack Turbin, to its committee. Turbin is well known as a medical activist in trans policy circles who will surely impose his, quote, expert, end quote, biased opinion about trans inclusion in women's sports on the NCAA. Turbin's 2021 article in Scientific American, Trans Girls Belong on Girls Sports Teams, claims, quote, there is no scientific case for excluding them, end quote, based on what research? Baker's admission is a direct indictment of the CSMAS and its dubious, quote, scientific, end quote, procedures. Now that we learn the committee has never cared about assessing the policy's harm to women since its adoption in 2010. For organizations representing women across generations like Concerned Women for America, the fact that Charlie Baker isn't catching any heat for his admission by any ruling political party is tragic. So now that I've read that article for extra context, and here I'll pull your screen share back up just so it's back up. But I think those women should sue. And I think all the virtue signaling that you see from these organizations about the importance of women's sports, the sanctity of sport, and things like that is just shown to be a lie. And it's nothing more than, like I said, virtue signal. Because you don't really care about women's sports. You don't really care about women athletes or any of that. Why would you allow men to what is the reason we even have the sexual distinction in sports to begin with if we don't at least have an inkling that men have an advantage in most sports over women? So I think this new information may help these women suit against the NCAA. But I also think that this is also a problem with feminism. This need for women to be equal to men is being undermined by the fact that women are not equal to men in real life. Right? We all have unique gifts as males and females that we're endowed with, that we use to contribute to society, to our relationships, to the world at large. And we should be happy that there are those differences, and we should learn to celebrate them. Yeah, we shouldn't expect women or embrace women only to the degree that they're able to emulate men. We should be able to, truly celebrate the differences between us that make our interactions great, especially for those men who like women, who are attracted to women. That is what we're attracted to you for, because you're not a man, right? So I'll stop there, but I'll let you, because I read a lot and talked a lot.
No. Conspiracy brother, I think you gave us a great just sort of reality check and kind of an overview of just sort of just the situation we're in. I believe we're in a war right now. And I believe it's a spiritual war, to be honest. I'm not here to push Christianity on anybody or anything. I've got another plane coming. Hold. All right, it's my last time recording it here. But yeah, there's even like a documentary starting to get a lot of buzz, make the rounds, called "The War on Children," and it's kind of just similar to like kind of the woke, the trans kid ideology stuff. So calling out a lot of that going on. So there's a war on women, and just the most craziest thing is that these biological men who are kind of like, I'm a woman now, I identify at it. They're like, how could you be a bigger chauvinist or misogynist? Like, just saying, because I feel this way, because I could dress this way, I can just come in here and take your spot. and let alone the double X chromosomes or XY chromosomes and all the real science behind it. I just feel this way, so you should comply. So once again, I hope they win. I hope they keep fighting for that. And once again, like I said, going back to our own people, that we should be able to see this stuff and go, okay, well, this is what's coming for us around the corner. Because, like I said, COVID, we were like, oh, that's the China stuff over there. It ends up hitting our community twice as hard. Oh, that, migrant issue, that's like south of the border, whatever, the border towns or white people can deal with that. Now Chicago residents are all up in arms, they're getting replaced. So these warning bells go off for a reason. And my biggest frustration is the disconnect on why at least our people, once again, I get the ones that watch MSNBC or CNN, they don't know any better. All right. But anybody who's really paying attention needs to see the writing on the wall and where this is going. Especially, I forgot if it got banned or not, or passed through, but they tried to make an amendment to Title IX. I think it may have went through, where it changed from actually biological gender to sexual identity or gender identity, where it's no longer a biological woman gender is protected. It's the gender identity. So I forgot if that went through or if it was amended, that Title IX aspect. But the biggest question I have here is like, especially kind of the hardcore feminists out there who claim to be like feminists and for women's rights, but then they simultaneously cheerlead the trans men invading all the women's spaces. Once again, like, if you're a grown adult, like, do you? If you want to you want to cross dress, if you want to identify as a woman, if you want to, like, live your life as a woman, that's fine. But it's the complying, it's the invading of other people's spaces and forcing them to comply to your reality is the issue I take. And you trying to take resources and spots and, like, the locker rooms, and we've seen the videos of mothers cussing out guys trying to change in the women's spa. So it's a spiritual war we're in. And I just say this is another cautionary tale. Because, like I mentioned, other examples before, it ends up hitting our community. We keep acting like, well, that's over here. It's for white folks. That's not going to affect us. And it hits us 2, 3 times as hard. So I guess, conspiracy brother, I guess the question is a little off the cuff here. I want to pose for you. We can move on to the next article. Is what is the disconnect? What is it about black folks where we can't seem to wake up about stuff with COVID until it hits us, until the migrant crisis, until it's on our doorstep. And now, like this, you don't see a lot of black people talking. They either don't want to say anything or they didn't talk about it. They kind of hope it goes away. And it's only a matter of time until there's going to be some black female athletes affected by this. What do you think, conspiracy brother, is that disconnect to where we don't want to acknowledge what's clearly coming until it smacks us right in the face? What do you think is that disconnect? 'Cause that's what frustrates me, you know.
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of times people feel so bogged down in their day-to-day lives that they cannot see outside of themselves and to understand what's going on in the world around them, honestly.
Mm.
And so you have situations where black people feel like, working, bills, whatever, life, stress. And I think sometimes, when you look at the way that the media elevates negative interactions that occur between black people and police or others, for example, aids in that frustration and hopelessness. And so it further causes, us to insulate instead of being able to spend energy and time, or even believing that we can spend energy and time, um, essentially participating in the world around us outside of ourselves.
Mm.
And so eventually it is too late, and the problem has already increased exponentially to the point where there's no turning back on it. But it's something that I've tried personally to help people to engage. And I think sometimes we misunderstand the impact these things have on our community. because a lot of times we can think, oh, these are white people problems. Well, this is an
Yeah.
America problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, while in some respect that could be true, you still live here. And so, you know, just like if you're in a car and you get hit by another car speeding, there's a chance that you could be safe in that vehicle. But would you like to risk your life on that chance, or would you be better served trying to be observant to the route you're taking, to the traffic around you, to the condition of the driver? You know what I'm saying? So it is unfortunate. But
Mm.
I mean, the more we do the show, hopefully people can understand how these issues relate to our community and, you know, to the country at large, and that we can do more things to try to get involved. Because for me, this is a particularly important issue because I have 2 daughters, I have a wife, I have sisters, I have a mother. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I want them to feel safe and I want them to be safe and I want them to be able to achieve to their greatest potential. But I don't want men or boys who have been unable to or incapable of competing against other men and boys, infringing upon their opportunity, right, for
Mm.
success in specifically created leagues or organizations because we understand the inherent differences between men and women. Not to say that one is better, you know, I'm not even trying to have that argument, but just the recognition that there is a difference. There is a difference. We are not the same. And so, if the sanctity of sport is so great that we must ensure maximum participation among all people, then make a transgender category or make an open category that if you are a
Mhm.
trans person, you must compete in the open category
Mm.
or a trans category, just like with the bathrooms and the locker rooms. Make a trans bathroom or a trans locker room. The idea that, you know, it is so necessary for these people to be able to compete in various ways or engage in civil society in various ways. But there is not enough importance for us to make sure that there is a third option available in sports, that there is a third option available in bathrooms and locker rooms in order to make sure that they have the opportunity for the most peace and comfort and peace of mind in their own spaces. Really shows you that the motivation for all of this is not concern, right?
Mm.
Because there's still a profit motive involved. Nobody really watches women's sports. Even less people would watch trans sports.
Yeah, that's an uncomfy truth for you. Let's just be real.
And so when you understand that, just like years ago, I believe it was 2020 or 2021, when the women's NCAA tournament complained that they didn't get the same funding as the men's NCAA tournament. And the NCAA said, well, hey, you don't generate as much revenue.
Hmm.
The NCAA wasn't paying anybody, right? So if you're a nonprofit organization who does not pay participants anyway, there's no limitation on the amount of amenities and facilities that you could provide for both tournaments, right? If you say, hey, well, you know, we fund the men's tournament based on the revenue that it generates, and we give the players money as a condition of participation based on the amount of revenue they generate, then you could say, well, yeah, you know, hey, y'all don't make enough money. You can't be subsidized. But this is a nonprofit organization. Nobody watches lacrosse. Nobody watches water polo. Nobody watches the track and field national championships or the gymnastics national championships. The only thing people really watch nationally is football and basketball. All the other sports could essentially disappear. And for the most part, nothing would change. Now, you do have some schools who like football, baseball, some schools who do like hockey. Some schools on the West Coast have beach volleyball and rowing and things like that. But those schools don't generate revenue, yet they still have national championships,
Mm.
right? So,
Yeah.
you know, we have to understand all this stuff, this diversity stuff, this DEI stuff. Somebody called it DIE, and I thought that was funny because I never thought about it, but
Mhm.
DIE,
Yeah.
diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think that's what I'm going to call it. The
Mhm.
die parameters.
Because it's killing
Uh,
shit, and making shit worse. Yeah.
right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, you said that perfectly. And that's what they do. This is all a gimmick. BlackRock, Vanguard, Blackstone, these investment companies, Larry Fink and the like, are invested in manipulating the behavior, the social behavior, the movements of us peons,
Mhm.
And so as a result, we suffer. And they call it in the name of progress. And it's not progress. So
Yeah. It's regression, taking us
right,
back, regressing women, regressing so many things we've been building. All right, so
right.
we got this next. We're gonna be winding down here pretty shortly. We got I think one or two articles after this, maybe one. But yeah, I know definitely conspiracy brother. You got a lot to say on this. A lot of buzz going on with this Boeing whistleblower dying suddenly. We don't know if he was vaxxed or not. Maybe that was he
Well, they said it
vaccinated?
was a gunshot wound.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But I guess
Well,
he could still have died of COVID, right?
yeah, exactly. Put plant the gun in his hand. Shoot, make
They
the
were
shot
calling
happen.
people, guys going to the hospital with his head cut off, and they said he died of COVID. So I
Died of
guess,
COVID. Yeah, it could be COVID death. But go ahead, conspiracy brother, break this one down. I'm gonna step out for just like 30 seconds. But yeah, go ahead and I guess set the stage. I'm not able to scroll, but I'll be right back. I'll be like 10 seconds. But go ahead and set the stage on this.
okay. Um. So this is John Barnett. He is a former, at this point, Boeing whistleblower. We've seen in the media how Boeing, the 737 MAX, which is an aircraft, has had some safety issues, to put it mildly. And John Barnett worked with the company until 2017 in, I believe, North or South Carolina. Um, and he most recently gained attention as a whistleblower because he was complaining about um, some of the safety issues that he encountered while he worked there as an inspector. Let's see. And trying to get the message out about the ways Boeing had cut corners in safety when they were producing these aircraft. And he was found dead from what they were saying was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The police um, did some investigation. It hasn't been publicly released, saying that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. They even later reported that there was a suicide note beside his body, but they did not release the contents of the note. So all very suspicious. What a great coincidence. Again, there are no coincidences. What a great coincidence that this happened, that this whistleblower was going to prepare to give an interview, and he was killed in the parking lot of he killed himself in the parking lot of the hotel he was staying at. So this new information came out. This is published Friday, 10:38 a.m. by Emily Blackstock for Jalopnik, who I think Jalopnik primarily writes about cars. But it says, if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. Friend of dead Boeing whistleblower says he told her. A family friend of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett says he warned her not to believe reports of suicide. And again, this kind of even reminds you of Aaron Bushnell, who the media went out of their way to call mentally disturbed. Yet when we watched the video of his pre-suicide self-immolation protest, he seemed completely cogent and clear-headed. So you can scroll down a bit. Or did you walk away already? Let's see. Looks like conservative brother is still out. So I'll find the article and I will pull it up. Give me uno minuto. Let's see.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So you want me to start reading?
Yeah, you can scroll down. Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
So
That was on
John
mute.
Barnett, 62, was in the process of testifying against the Boeing company regarding the aircraft manufacturer's manufacturing processes when he was found dead in South Carolina with what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Now, though, a family friend of Barnett says that before he died, he warned her that if he were found dead, it would not be the result of a suicide. And this reminds you of his what's his name? His name is Gary Webb. He wrote for the, I think it was the Sacramento Bee or the Mercury News about the U.S. government bringing in crack cocaine into black neighborhoods via the CIA, and he was found dead, self-inflicted. He was found with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. So they said he died of suicide as well with two gunshot wounds to the head. So
shocking.
We know
I didn't know you could shoot yourself in the head twice.
I didn't either.
Shocking.
But it says, so Jennifer, who did not share her surname, like they won't be able to find it. Don't forget about the Patriot Act. Spoke to local ABC News affiliate WPDE about a concerning conversation that she says she had with Barnett. She alleges that Barnett came by to visit her when she needed help, and they began to speak about his upcoming deposition in Charleston, South Carolina. Scroll down. Quote, he wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, end quote. Jennifer told WPDE, quote, I said, aren't you scared, end quote. And he said, quote, no, I ain't scared, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide, end quote. Barnett was staying in a Holiday Inn in Charleston ahead of his deposition. When his lawyers were unable to contact Barnett, they called in a wellness check, according to police reports obtained by the New York Post. A hotel staff member found Barnett's body in his pickup truck. He was holding a silver pistol in his hand and appeared to have died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Jennifer told, and most people, at least as far as I know, now obviously I thought most people when they shot themselves, they would put the gun in their mouth. But I guess you could have shot himself in the head. What do I know? I've never done it. Jennifer told WPDE that she knows, quote, he did not commit suicide. There's no way. He loved life too much. He loved his family too much. He loved his brothers too much to put them through what they're going through right now. And, quote, she believes that someone wanted to silence Barnett. I wonder who. I can't imagine who. Boeing would do this. Of course, there is no way to verify Jennifer's specific claims. Newsweek reached out to the several sources without luck. However, Barnett's lawyer, Robert Perkowitz and Brian Knowles, shared that, quote, no one can believe, end quote, he was suicidal. He was in, quote, good spirits, end quote, and shared no indication that he would take his life. In fact, he seemed eager to put this chapter of his life behind him. It is worth noting that many suicides can seem to come, quote, out of the blue, end quote. Oh, thank you, Newsweek. Jalopnik, despite someone's good spirits, Barnett's role in such a high-profile case, however, has raised concerns of foul play, and Barnett's family has requested that police investigations reflect those concerns. Boeing has been embroiled in scandal as its aircraft seem to be malfunctioning on a regular basis. A deep investigation into the company's safety and manufacturing processes stemmed from a flight that saw a Boeing 737 MAX 9 lose an entire door plug while in the air in January. Since that door incident, Boeing's planes have gushed fluid, taken sudden nosedives, and lost a wheel. A Federal Aviation Administration audit found that Dawn dish soap was used as a lubricant in the manufacturing process, which soap is not a lubricant, and that mechanics checked door seals with a hotel key card, which is also not the tool you're supposed to use. Unfortunately, investigations have been hampered by a Boeing policy that sees its security camera footage automatically deleted after 30 days.
Jesus Christ.
Now, here's what they expect you to believe. And I have to thank Brother Nick Cruz at RBM for his insight into this story. But they would have you believe that a man who, for the last 7 years, has been trying to speak out against the safety practices of this company would all of a sudden be finally getting traction with his story, having interviews, meeting with politicians on TMZ, and then after all this time, commit suicide. That's what they want you to believe. It would be like, Martin Luther King. They wanted him to commit suicide. Remember, there was an FBI memo where they said that he should just kill himself, right? But it would be as though Martin Luther King, after having all the work done that he had completed, would have killed himself. This is preposterous, right? How could a man, and we have an interview, clip of the interview with him on TMZ. It's like a 2-minute video. But how could they expect us to believe that a man such as this, in this position, would wait until he finally got traction with the story of the safety issues that he had been reporting about, the violations, and then he would decide at that moment this was the best time to commit suicide? How stupid do they think we are?
No time like the present. It's a good time.
Who would want to kill this man? Boeing is using soap to lubricate the aircraft. Who would want to kill this man? I can only imagine. So I'll let you kind of, you can take some from there, but I would like to play that clip.
Yeah, is it in the article?
No, it's in the group me. It's it should be one of the more recent videos, or one of the recent posts that I got. It's
can you post it in the StreamYard private chat real quick? And I could pull it up real quick. Yeah. So while Conspiracy Brothers doing that, most definitely. I feel like this unfortunately has a darker agenda at play, as far as like, what are these secrets? What is it that Boeing is trying to hide? I feel like part of it kind of has to do with the bigger globalist agenda. So I'm pulling up the link now that I'll speak on, as far as like, fear mongering travel. You don't need to fly anywhere. Eventually, flying is going to be a privilege, like a luxury privilege. I just feel like there's a lot of 2030 Davos WEF agenda. Like, that's why you don't need to fly. So next thing you know, like, flying is going to be fear mongered. So I'll touch more on that, but hold on a second. Okay. Can you hear it now? Can you hear that?
One, this is not a 737 problem, it's a Boeing problem.
Yes.
I know they've gone in and they've done due diligence and inspections to assure that the door plugs of the 737 are installed properly and the fasteners are stored properly. But my concern is, what's the rest of the airplane? What's the rest of the condition of the airplane? And the reason my concern for that is, back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work. So what we're seeing with the door plug blowout is what I've seen with the rest of the airplane, as far as jobs not being completed properly, inspection steps being removed, issues being ignored. My concerns are with the 737 and the 787, because those programs have really embraced the theory that quality is overhead and non-value. So those two programs have really put a strong effort into removing quality from the process. When I first started working at Charleston, I was in charge with pushing back defects to our suppliers. And what that meant was I'd take a group of inspectors and actually go to the supplier and inspect their product before they sent it in. Well, I'd taken a team of 4 inspectors to Spirit Aerosystems to inspect the 41 section before they sent it to Charleston. And we found 300 defects.
Some of them were significant that needed engineering intervention. When I returned to Charleston, my senior told me we had found too many defects and he was going to take the next trip. So the next trip he went on, he took two of my inspectors, and when they got back, they were given accolades for only finding 50 defects. So I pulled that inspector aside. I said, "Did Spirit really clean up their act that quick? That don't sound right." And she was mad. She said, "No." Said the two inspectors were given 2 hours to inspect the whole 41 section and they were kicked off the airplane.
Wow. So, what's your thoughts on that conspiracy, brother?
Well, I have another article. I have actually kind of like two articles about this, but so Boeing outsourced John Oliver, piece of trash.
Oh
Um,
man.
so Boeing actually outsourced their well, the FAA outsourced air safety issue their air safety program. And let's see, I want to post this one so we can read this one too.
Okay.
It's from 2017. So kind of give you some background about how this all came about. And this is the issue, when we have a system that places profits as the paramount or the let's see.
Cream, cash rules everything around me.
Right. When it's the supreme issue or supreme concern, like with the military industrial complex and vice versa, this is a paramount importance in our country is profit. And so these individuals are going to find ways to ensure that their profits are not hindered or squandered in any way. And this is what you see happening, right? So here you go from April 20, 2019, Boeing 737 MAX FAA's outsourcing of air safety raises conflict of interest questions. And so you outsource air safety and then the planes fall apart 5 years later. You know what I mean?
The fruit of your labor unfolding before you.
Right. And so with whatever, the Federal Aviation Administration has for years allowed many aerospace companies to use their own workers in place of FAA inspectors, a system that is coming under scrutiny after two Boeing 737 MAX jetliners crashed, killing the crews and passengers. Right, so this should have been the Ethiopian Airlines, I think. A total of 79 companies are allowed under federal policies to let engineers or other workers considered qualified report on safety to the FAA on systems deemed not to be most critical rather than leaving all inspections to the government agency. To critics, it's a regulatory blind spot. Quote, the FAA decided to do safety on the cheap, which is neither safe nor cheap, and put the fox in charge of the henhouse, as you have said earlier, end quote, said Richard Blumenthal, Democrat, Connecticut. In a statement, he's vowed to introduce legislation, quote, so that the FAA has put back in charge. So this FAA is put back in charge of safety, end quote. I guess he didn't do it. The safety inspection program operates widely under the benign name of Organization Designation Authorization. It has come under renewed attention after the crash of two jets, Lion Air of Indonesia, an accident that killed 189 in October, and the Ethiopian Airlines crash last month that claimed 157 passengers and crew. The list of companies that applied and were approved by the FAA includes some of the best-known names in aviation, such as private aircraft makers Learjet and Gulfstream, and helicopter companies like Bell and Sikorsky. Companies choose choose workers as FAA quote designees, end quote, allowing them to stay on the payroll while assessing safety for the federal agency, which then reviews their work. Boeing, like many aviation companies, depend depended on the system to stay competitive. The airline maker unveiled the more fuel-efficient MAX version of the 737, an aircraft series first designed in the 60s. The new 737 MAX model, approved by the FAA in 2017, was made to compete with arch rival Airbus and its popular A320 jetliner. And I'm going to guess that all this stuff happening is not helping.
Yeah.
737 MAX airborne, Boeing developed a software-based automated anti-stalling system that is being blamed as having been a key factor in both crashes. The system was designed to make pilots feel like the aircraft had the same flying dynamics as previous versions. But in the two crashes, either the system or the sensors on which it depends malfunctioned, pushing the plane's nose toward the ground as pilots tried to keep the aircraft aloft. Dan Elwell, acting director of the Federal Aviation Administration, told the Senate Commerce Subcommittee on Aviation and Space last month that the system, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, was initially supervised directly by the FAA, but was then handed over to ODA supervision once the agency's, quote, comfort level, end quote, with the system had risen. It is those kinds of disclosures that are raising concern, quote, as I understand it. Any system that was safety critical was supposed to have more direct FAA oversight, end quote, said U.S. Rep. Peter Fazio D. Oregon, chairman of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The larger issue, DeFazio said, is the extent to which the FAA became complicit in Boeing's desire to rush a plane that could compete against Airbus in a way that could have compromised safety. Quote, we've got to find out whether the FAA was pressured by Boeing, end quote, said DeFazio, who plans to hold a committee hearing on the issue. Corporate self-inspection under FAA auspices has been allowed in various forms for decades, but it wasn't until 2005 that the ODA system was created under Bush, to allow private sector employees deemed to be highly qualified to be appointed to the FAA's eyes and ears in the development of aircraft. The rationale was that the private sector inspectors could keep tabs on the more routine features of aircraft under development, allowing the FAA's team to focus on the harder, riskier systems. Mindful of commercial aviation safety record is the U.S. In the U.S., there wasn't a single passenger death since 2009 until a Southwest Airlines passenger died after a 737 engine failure a year ago. And Southwest only flies 737s. The ODA program was reauthorized in 2018, and it was the FAA's support. It still has the FAA's support. The FAA said in a statement that companies aren't left to police themselves. Quote, the agency is directly involved in the testing and certification of new and novel features and technologies, end quote, it said. But the program hasn't been without its issues. In 2015, the Transportation Department's Inspector General said a report that he had found 4 instances of self-audits in which employees working under the ODA program said they felt time pressure, quote, which could lead to rushing safety-critical tasks to meet safety schedule. Quote, end quote. Inspector General Calvin Scoville told the Senate subcommittee that 2 of the instances had come from Boeing. Boeing said in a statement to USA Today that the process of using, quote, employees who are designated representatives of the FAA, end quote, has led to the safest transportation system in the world. Its workers act independently on behalf of the FAA when performing this role, end quote. I guess he was lying, right?
Shocking.
Your plane's been crashing and falling apart. I guess he was lying.
Killing
the program
people
is in no right. And the program is in no danger of being abolished. The FAA estimates it would need to hire 10,000 more inspectors at a cost of $1.8 billion in additional payroll costs if the program didn't exist. It isn't just Congress that's skeptical. A union representing FAA inspectors, the Professional Aviation Safety Specialists, has been opposed to the expansion of the ODA system for years. Quote, they have expanded the ODA program too far. end quote, said Mike Perrone, the union's president. Larry Rooney, president of the Coalition of Airline Pilots Associations, an umbrella organization of 4 airline pilot unions, takes a more nuanced view. While acknowledging there are issues connected with letting aircraft makers take part in the oversight role, he said the FAA might not have the expertise or the manpower to handle the task itself. The whole system is based on trust between aviation company and the regulator, and Rooney added, referring to the latest 737 MAX crash, it's yet to be seen where the fault in the development of the MCAS system lies. Quote, was there a breakdown in the particular incident, end quote, he said, quote, or a rush to get the plane out? That's a story for another day, end quote. Well, here's another day, 5 years later, nothing's been solved. The door,
shit.
can you imagine being in a plane 30,000 plus feet in the air and the door blow off? And you sit next to the door? Can you imagine?
I can't, man. I can't. It's out of a movie. That's a movie, a plane crash movie.
Completely.
Goddamn.
Taking the words right out of my mouth.
Mm.
But this is the way, this thing happens. And still, and I have to continue to go to this because this is just relevant.
Yeah.
But still, our Congress, our government wants to send hundreds of $billions to foreign countries who don't border us for conflicts that don't concern us. When they said an extra $1.8 billion will be needed to fund 10,000 more employees, and we don't have it. But you done spent 100 times that much for Ukraine and Israel. How much is your life worth to these people? That's what I'm saying. It's got to be something else. Now, what I would recommend you do, you can go on RBN YouTube page and find their video where they're talking about this topic. Nick, it's a Nick at Night, I believe, or Nick at Noon. But you can also look for the full TMZ interview of John Barnett. I'm not saying you do it now. I'm just saying that the viewers who might want more insight, because he talks about how when he was doing inspections, he got in trouble because he found 100 or 200 violations. And so the next time they had an inspection trip, they didn't send him to go. And 2 more people went, and they only found 50, and they were getting congratulated. And he said he talked to them and said, did you only find 50? Was it really that good? And they said, no, we got rushed. It took us, they only gave us 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm about to say
40 planes.
When you read that originally, I mean, I think when the guy, the John, what was his name? John, the whistleblower?
Barnett.
Barnett, when he said they expected it for 2 hours, I'm not even in air quality control. And that even felt short. That didn't even sound like enough time. 2 hours. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. Right? But that's the thing. They will have you believe that there's never enough money for you. There's not enough money to pay for you to go to college or your kids. There's not enough money to enforce some type of living wage, right? The American worker has not got an increase in real wages since the 1970s, between 73 and 75. There's not a way to give us health care in this country. There's not enough money for that. There's not enough money to subsidize people for the cost of groceries or gas. There's not enough money to do anything that benefits the people. But you can always find money for war. You can always find money to pay a foreign country to buy weapons. You can always find a way for politicians to pay their friends who work in corporations that they get kickbacks from or that they invested in their stock. This is the country you live in. And you want me to be afraid of China. You want me to be afraid of Russia. Those people are being taken care of by their government. And if they ain't, it's up to them to raise a fuss about it like I'm raising a fuss about it here. You lost over 300 people in 2 crashes. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, no, 5 years ago, it's 2024. 5 years ago. And now you find out that they're lubricating planes with soap Soap is not a lubricant.
My mom's favorite dishwasher liquid, that Dawn. That
You know what I'm
Dawn,
saying?
boy.
You leave Dawn out in the air and it gets dry. Soap is not a lubricant.
That dollar store Dawn. That Dollar
Lubricants
Tree
don't get
Dawn.
dry in the air.
Man,
You putting soap as a lubricant on an airplane.
they
When
capping
are you
for
going to
real.
wake up and start having a revolution? When are you going to wake up and say enough is enough? You can't kill us. You can't kill our people who speak out. You can't intimidate us. You can't lock us up when we credibly call you out for the ways that you have lied and stolen from us. When are we going to say enough is enough? You violate our rights every single day. And every day we just go through the motions, ho hum, ho hum, ho hum. No big deal. There's another article concerning this plane. We don't necessarily have to read it, but it says that it was a former Boeing inspector who realized the plane that he was getting on for his flight was a 737 MAX, and he got off the plane. This guy used to work there.
Shit.
And he said when he found out the plane he was supposed to get on was a 737 MAX, he got off.
That's good to know. I'm making a note of that right now. Whenever I book my flight, I'm gonna check up what the plane is.
I think the airlines that have it in this country, I think United has it. I don't know if American has it.
Spirit
but
got
United
it.
and American might have the 737 MAX.
Spirit got that bad boy. You already know. Flying Spirit.
Well, see, Spirit might not have it. The only reason they might not have it is because it's new. And I don't know if they're buying new planes at Spirit. Spirit might be getting them same planes that catch the Spirit Airlines in the 90s. They fly them boys. But I think there was Airbuses. I think Spirit flies Airbus.
Spirit to have any plane, they'll throw that yellow wrapper over that boy, and
yeah.
You don't know what it is underneath. I'm just talking.
But no, I mean, but they ain't got no new plane though. So unless the people's giving away Boeing Air Maxes, Spirit, you're getting the headlock, and that's safer than flying on the Boeing Max. Can you believe that? It's safer to fly on Spirit and have to fight the flight attendants and the gate agents than it is to fly on a Boeing aircraft.
And fight those fees left and right. I'd rather fight Spirit fees than lose my life on a Boeing Max jet.
You know what I'm saying?
I fight for the fees. At least I live another day. I'll be fighting those fees though, but I'll live another day.
And that's the situation. That's what I'm saying. And they want to tell you, it costs too much. It costs too much. How much is your life worth? Is Chuck Schumer putting his kids on the plane? Is Joe Biden putting his kids on the plane? Is Mitch McConnell putting his... Now, we didn't get to talk about his sister-in-law. Maybe he'll put his sister-in-law on the plane.
Oh,
died in that Tesla.
Yeah, died in that Tesla. Yep, there's that. Yeah, we're going to maybe
we have so much information, folks. We already 3 hours into the show, and we haven't really stopped. And, I mean, we got a million more articles we could be talking about. It's just... There's so much happening in 2 weeks.
You could, but I think this is a great,
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying I wanted to kind of convey to the listeners, we have so much stuff to talk about every week that we do this show. And, we really are trying to whittle down to the most important topics that we can think of that are relevant to you all, looking under the surface and around the corner of all this stuff. But, yeah, man, whenever we need money, there's never money. But whenever they need hundreds of billions of dollars to send around the world, you never hear them think about it. When during COVID, when they shut everybody down and forced people to close their businesses, forced them to stay home and didn't work, they gave billions and trillions of dollars to the corporations and the banks. Just instantly. They made they gave them like $5 to $7 billion over the course of a moment. And then then daily they made $1 trillion accessible
It was
to
blank
banks
check
and
money.
corporations.
Blank check money.
Right.
And
But
I
when
just
you
want
say
to.
you need something as a citizen, hey, go
Mhm.
fix the border. When Trump said, "I'm gonna build a wall," whether it was stupid or not, you can't afford that. You can't afford that. But you can afford to give hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign countries who don't pay taxes here. What is really going on? Planes falling out the sky, chunks of plane. That tire fell off a plane when it was taking off, and it messed up cars in the parking lot.
Mm.
What is going on with What is going on with Boeing? I mean, we know what's going on. Obviously, we see this program, but what is really going on?
What's going
What is going on
on?
with the world around us?
And also, too, conspiracy bro, I just want to interject here. I think this is a great expansion of kind of like not only do we kind of touch on the Boeing here and now 2024 John I keep boring I keep forgetting his last name, but his passing and unfortunately the link back to this USA Today article is a great sort of examination. And this just goes to show another example of just unchecked capitalism and unregulated capitalism. There's regulations, obviously, to capitalism to an extent. And what you have when you have unchecked capitalism, that mutates into uh, corporatism, which mutates into globalism. All right. Now, once again, I'm not 100% against capitalism. I believe, once again, like manageable, like done right capitalism, once again, that's lifted a lot of people, especially black people, out of poverty. Once again, let's talk about pre 1950s. A lot of, while we did have the Jim Crow laws, at the same time we had more entrepreneurs, small business owners, a lot of coming out of that slavery and going into industrial revolution. There were a lot of people in different groups, even up through the 2000s, 1900s, that were lifted out of poverty through capitalism, starting a small business, working for yourself, self-employed. I'm not against that. I'm a capitalist to an extent, but to a manageable extent. And the big problem is when it's taken too far to where, once again, you get this unchecked capitalism of the monopolies, the mergers, too many companies coming together. Even with our friends over the Revolutionary Blackout Network, I'm not like a full-on socialist like a Nick Cruz or a Compton Jay. I don't agree with everything they say, but once again, their community aid model, their mutual aid model, their certain philosophies on socialism I rock with. Now, a lot of countries, the socialism, yeah, it gets corrupted by certain governments. It mutates into communism. We ain't down for like the full-on totalitarian communism. But at the same time, like you mentioned before with China, love or hate their CCP, they do to some extent, they take care of their people. Now, is it like a regime I may want to live under? Maybe not. But they do take care of their own. So I kind of bring that up to say is that this Boeing, they're willing to let people lose their lives because guess what, the lawsuits or whatever public backlash, it doesn't matter because they make more money as far as their margin or what they saved on those parts or saved putting money into those inspections of quality. Same way big pharma knows there's going to be plenty of people that get killed from their products, the opioid pandemic, opioid epidemic, and all the lawsuits is like is like paying for a parking ticket compared to the profits they made. So I think a lot of people don't catch the parallels. And I'm seeing with Boeing is that on the flip side, what they save in BS quality control, skimping on parts, what they save is way more than whatever backlash they get from the lives lost. Same way Big Pharma, what they make from the vaccine sales far more exceeds the little lawsuits or petty settlements they have to pay for. So if that's happening in one industry, it's happening in the other, and that's what these two stories you highlighted just once again validated more of just what I've already assumed. So I just wanted to kind of at least hit on that point. Um, just with that. You know, that's all I got.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at a capitalist system, capitalism tends toward monopoly.
Hmm.
So all these companies would rather have monopolies too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not possible for us to behave as though there is inherent fairness in this capitalist system that we have nowadays because things have gotten so concentrated. The way that we have organized these companies has gotten so concentrated that our ability to really engage in this system in the ways that you could in the 50s and even in the 60s is not there. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so we're all at the mercy of more money capitalist owners and investors to the point where the average person does not have a dream of ever
Mm.
having a breakthrough.
Mm. No, you pretty much you said it. And one thing, last question, or at least like we're gonna be capping things off here pretty soon. We're hitting the 3 hour mark. I don't know if this is a record break, but it's great we have these conversations. We need this. So my question I want to pose for you, conspiracy brother, we can probably maybe wrap it up with this. Do you think with Boeing, is it a twofold as far as their benefit? The first way they're benefiting, like I mentioned, the skipping on the parts, the skipping on the quality control. So they have higher profits at the expense of lives lost or even public backlash. But also on the back end, it's creating this new fear of flying that we haven't seen before, this sort of hysteria in the media. So that leads to like, oh, like these a lot of companies and politicians are gonna hammer down on these airlines and oh well now you probably shouldn't fly because it's not safe. And now like it creates not only this fear around flying, but as the economy and prices of flying goes up, now it's like, what? You don't need to fly. You should just stay where you are. Flying shouldn't be that much of a priority. Plus, it's safe. Plus, it's not safe. You might die. You might die. So do you think there's kind of a 2030 Davos WEF agenda like on the back end? Like, once again, Boeing's getting money skimping, but at the same time, they're pleasing those globalists to be like, yeah, we don't want people to fly. We want to make sure they fear flying, and that could go back to you will own nothing and be happy. You don't need to fly. You don't need to travel. We can kind of control you. It's like a slow burn control of people flying because they're not only are they can't afford it in this Biden economy, but now we're gonna scare the shit out of you to even fly. Just want to get your thought on that. That's my theory.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's entirely possible. That's kind of what I was hitting at when I said, "What is going on with Boeing?" Because
Yeah.
it's so insane what has happened that it's hard to understand it in a context of a natural occurrence. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's so
Stuff like
weird.
this was unfathomable 5 after this article was ahead of the game, but we weren't having conversations about flight safety like this. And then of course the kind of the DEI stuff about them kind of trying to blame DEI. I kind of see a little bit, but I think it's a little bit of a red herring. But yeah, I feel you. But yeah, keep going. You were saying.
Yeah, like how do you allow something to get this bad before you intervene? Is really what makes me question how any of this is even allowed to occur at all. That's the part that really like what do they say it so I'd have to suspend my disbelief in a way that I'm not capable of in order for me to believe that there isn't some deeper purpose behind all this. It doesn't make sense. Legitimately, it doesn't make sense.
That's that George Orwell shit. Don't believe your eyes and ears. Don't believe
Right.
your own eyes and ears. Just listen to us. Thought crime. But yeah, this was a great show. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just stop my screen, but we can kind of sort of wrap things up. Great show. Talk about a TikTok ban, NCAA's lawsuit for women's rights, and then John Barrett, Boeing whistleblower, among other topics. But yeah, a lot going on, and I'm glad we have these conversations. Like I said, we're gonna update some of our our show crawl. We're probably gonna be continuing bi-weekly on weekends, maybe like the Saturday, Sundays. Never say never. We probably do a Friday as well sometimes. But yeah, I think this was a great show. A lot to unpack, a lot of other stuff coming up. Obviously, we're in election year 2024. So, we got to bust out all the stop. But yeah, Conspiracy Brother, anything else before we kind of wrap things up here?
No, I don't. I don't really have anything else. I'm glad to always be able to share the information and the perspective with everybody. And, we have to continue to ask questions. We have to continue to try to figure out what the deeper meaning is behind all this stuff. We can't accept stuff at face value. We have to learn to get beyond that, because there's always something going on, and we just need to understand, or try to find out what it is, right? Because this is all really just wild insanity, and I'm almost at a loss for words.
Dun dun dun. Tune in next week, see what happens on Uncomfy Truths. But yeah, it's just a horror movie roller coaster we can't get off of, but we might as well just sit here and talk shit about it, see what happens. All right, sorry YouTube. I know y'all get all antsy about profanity. So sometimes it just slips. It's a free speech side.
I think we should be good at this stage in the show, because I know I heard they do it a lot, like the first 30 seconds or a minute or something. I've heard different numbers.
Oh, word?
Yeah, I think we should be good.
Oh, we Gucci. I think it was about an hour and a half. I had to just drop a profanity, some profanity. So okay, yeah, bet I could definitely wait beyond the first few minutes. So all right, cool. All right, y'all. So hope everybody had a good Sunday. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those that celebrate it. Any Irish folks out there, or if you identify as Irish, or whatever it is. Yeah, we will be back in 2 weeks to end off the month. We didn't really get a chance to maybe hit on Trump's Super Tuesday victory. Obviously, it's going to be some aspect of Trump we talk about each show, but obviously he's this unstoppable. I love him or hate him. He kind of keeps coming. So we'll have a lot more about him, and then like a lot of other issues too, obviously. But yeah, we will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Have a great evening, and yeah, Uncomfy Truths. We out of this thing. So
Peace.
Peace.